Good morning, you're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Wednesday morning and the previews for the weekend are finally going to start here. We can forget about all the hurling snobbery because it's time to look ahead to the Super 8s. Mossy Quinn is with us in studio this morning. We're going to have Paul Conroy with us a little bit later on, the injured Galway midfielder. He'll be chatting to us about the last 2.5 weeks or so in his life and looking ahead as well to Galway versus Monaghan as well this weekend. We'll also have the legendary trainer Jim Bolger with us a little bit later on, talking about hurling for cancer and a little bit about his own legendary racing training career and indeed a little bit on breeding as well. We'll also have Johnny Ward, of course, from Ballybrit ahead of day 3 of the Galway Races. If you've got any questions for anybody or any opinions, anything you want to get off your chest, you can tweet us at Off The Ball or you can comment on the stream if you happen to be watching on YouTube or Facebook. A very good morning to you, Mossy.
Thanks, Alan. How's things?
Not too bad. As I said there, time to forget about the hurling. It's all about the big ball this weekend. It's a change attack. We will focus on the hurling, of course, a little bit later on in the week ahead of the replay. But football's got a lot to live up to after what's happened over the last 5 or 6 days.
Bit of pressure on it, all right, after the weekend, yeah. And in fairness, there's a good weekend of football coming up, so hopefully we get a couple of classics as well. You
were saying that you could hear the roars from St Vincent's on Saturday. I didn't actually know you could hear Croke Park from Vincent's.
Well, usually you can't. It has to be a pretty special atmosphere. But yeah, we had a club league game Saturday evening and I was getting out of the car and it was Galway were winning 1-7 to a point. Excuse me, and I thought that Galway were going to go ahead and win that game pretty handy, but as I was out in the pitch you could hear a roar and I was thinking that's not the roar of a game, that's someone's winning handy enough. And then we were going into the second half of our game threw in at 6 o'clock and there was still roars coming, so subsequently I was trying to work it out. I reckon one of them was the Clare goal in extra time, one of them was equaliser in the normal time, then the goal in extra time, and yeah, you could still hear it going on. We were in the second half, so it was obviously pretty special and you could genuinely hear proper roars. We're a couple of miles up the road and you knew there was something special going on, so when we came in after and heard the score, it was obvious.
Yeah, clearly. A couple of special occasions this weekend. Salt Hill and Ballybofey, probably the two big ones. Croke Park as well, of course, hosting something on Sunday, which isn't going to get many headlines. It's like with the hurling now as well, with the replay, it's going to really be relegated to kind of a mediocre level. But at the same time, just chatting outside in the office with you, it's actually a relatively intriguing sort of decision from Jim Gavin this weekend in terms of which players does he play and how much does he read into the performances of the players that do come in.
Yeah, it is a hard one because it's unusual for Dublin. Like even in the past, if they've qualified for league finals or if they've qualified for games where you feel like they've a game to spare or kind of somewhat of a dead rubber, traditionally they've never really rested everyone or they haven't changed the whole team. They've kind of introduced one or two guys here and there. So whereas this weekend I think is different. They're going to be 6 days out. They know they're 6 days out from an All-Ireland semi-final. They effectively have an advantage over the opponent that they're going to be playing, that they know they've qualified. They can kind of rest up a couple of key guys. So I think it's intriguing. But then there's pros and cons to doing that. You get some of your key guys rest, but then some of your squad guys come in and what happens if they go in and shoot the lights out against Roscommon? They're putting more pressure on, which again it just makes management's job slightly more difficult in terms of, you know, if someone comes in and kicks 2-4, 2-5 and you then tell them, well, you're back on the bench the following week and things like that. So there are good problems to have for Jim Gavin and his management team, but it's a different aspect that they might have to look at.
Yeah, great problems to have. In fact, as I say, we will be chatting about that later on. Here's what's coming up on today's show. We're going to be chatting about the Super 8s, as we said there, around 8:10 this morning. The Galway Races then coming your way at 8:30. It's Galway Plate Day in Ballybrit. Johnny Ward will be online with us to give you all your tips ahead of day 3 there. The sports wrap at 8:45, a couple of things coming up there like Aidan O'Shea and Garrett Brooks, and why Sean O'Brien and Odell Beckham Jr. have a lot more in common than you think. And at 5 to 9 then, Jim Bolger, the legendary horse racing trainer and legendary Wexford man really, will be chatting to us about hurling, about horse racing training and horse racing breeding as well. But before all that, it's time for the back pages.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
We'll start with the Irish Independent this morning, and they lead with what is one of the strangest stories of the summer, I think. Heart kicks a touch in Sky Oma pitch battle. So this is the situation that we've had with regards to the Oma clash between Tyrone and Dublin a couple of weeks ago in the Super 8s, and Mickey Hart has refused to clarify his comments that he said, if you missed this, Sky were the reason why the pitch dimensions got narrowed. Now Sky came out and said they have never done anything like that, they would never do anything like that, it is not up to them, they don't have the power to make a call like that. And Mickey Hart, obviously doing media this week ahead of round 3 of the Super 8s, has said that he doesn't need to clarify it. It's finished, I'm not talking about it anymore. And it just leaves the question linger, what the hell was going on?
Yeah, I'd say he probably put it in a bit of a throwaway comment at the time and kind of thought that'd be like it might take the focus off him, but obviously people are still interested in it. I don't for one second think Sky have any kind of power in that instance in terms of telling county boards or asking county boards what dimensions they need. And while Senan Connell probably needs a lot of space for a sideline report, I don't think he needs that much space, you know. So I think, look, it's a bit strange. Even the fact that it's coming up and we were going through the back page and to see it's still there today, it's obviously something the journalists are kind of asking to see if they can get a reaction out of Mickey. And it might lead into, like, he obviously has a difficult relationship with RTE, and it's one of those ones, if another manager was talking to multiple broadcasters, it might have been easier to kind of just let it lie, whereas maybe this is an angle to go at just to see what way he goes. Yeah,
it is very strange. It's like, I don't think he's going to clarify this at any point, so it's probably just going to be one of those stories that is just going to sit there now for the rest of the time. The other thing that we've got on the back page of the Irish Independent this morning is Mourinho rowing back on transfer demands. So he's attempted to ease the tension at Manchester United, Luke Edwards' piece goes, but he has backed down on his demand for 2 more signings to be made before the start of the season. So he's basically used the media as a tool to say to Ed Woodward, listen, I need more players in my squad. And for once, or maybe not for once, but the latest line in a situation where Jose Mourinho hasn't worked, or his ability to actually kind of change the course of a club via press conferences hasn't worked on this occasion. So he seems to have backed down a little bit. He's confident he's going to get 1 player, he says, but 2 I'm not going to get, which is not a drama, Mourinho says. So it's good to see Jose Mourinho avoiding drama in his career. Not a drama, but he's made it a bit of a drama the last couple of weeks. In fairness, he's been sulking his way across America on the pre-season tour. So it's one thing, again, he does try and agitate for things publicly, and you saw him coming out saying he gave his list of 5 players, and he's just adding that little bit of pressure to the board or to the, you know, whoever's responsible for kind of going out and making these signings. He's kind of made it clear, well, I've made my wishes, and he's like the spoiled child, kind of saying, well, I'm not getting what I want, and I suppose I'll make what's best of it if I have to. But you know, you can tell he's not happy. Yeah, like these pre-season tours are glorified J1s. Like, it's time to lighten up, man, and actually just smell the roses. Go and enjoy it, yeah. And even his attitude towards, and he's given out that the guys he has there, 50% of them aren't going to be on his squad in the next couple of weeks. Does that matter? Should he not be there? Like, is that not a 50% are going to be there? So should you not be making it the best trip possible for them? Can you not improve them? And what's the problem with improving 50% of guys who mightn't be there? Like, he might be saying it's a waste of his time, but you know, surely from a coaching perspective, from a team perspective, from the whole, you hear the word culture thrown in, the whole in terms of good, successful sports teams. It's hard to see how he's creating any kind of a positive or a successful culture when he's so negative himself publicly. And I know managers can come out and have different spins on it, and he might be in the dressing room saying, well, look, I'm going to say this, but there's no way he can come out that publicly and be that negative and then have the buy-in of all the players in the background. Yeah, like, if it would be really odd if he was saying that in the dressing room, that I'm going to go out there and give a contrary message to the one I'm giving you. Not to that extent, but like, I've been in dressing rooms before, managers have kind of said, look, publicly we might say something really, here. Yeah, a little bit. Now, again, certainly not to Mourinho levels, yeah. But you know, even from a messaging perspective in terms of where we're at or what our aims are, you might kind of play it down, or you might even play it up to try and take a bit of pressure off. But at his level, you'd often, I'm very sceptical. Any manager in any sport makes a comment, there's very few that I'd put a lot of trust in. I'm always kind of looking at it saying, okay, there has to be an angle here, what are they looking towards? But with Mourinho, it's hard to see it at this stage, and particularly the evolution of this United squad. You've got to feel they've got to go and try and properly challenge for a title this year. And you know, he's already whinging and moaning, and you look at the off seasons that Man City and Liverpool have had, and a couple of other teams, even Arsenal, the transition they're going through, and you're kind of wondering, I'm a United fan, so you're kind of wondering as a United fan, are you going to be 2 or 3 months into the year and you've got the usual Jose drama where it's someone's fault, and you're don't think we need to wait 2 or 3 months. No, and that's the thing, it feels like it's coming sooner, you know, and feels like he's putting himself under a bit of pressure early on, and you know, in the season, like, they've got guys coming back late, and again, one of them, I think we're talking about, he's looking for Pogba and Lukaku to come back early and all this type of stuff, but he's putting himself under a bit of pressure early on. We don't need to name names here, but so when there's a manager who's coming in and giving you a different message, what is it? Are they saying, we're flying here, lads, but I'm going to go out and say that, you know, we've still got a lot of work to do? I presume that's how it works. Yeah, possibly. And again, I genuinely don't have a specific example off the top of my head, but it's one of those where there could be something like that, where they come in and say, okay, look, from in terms of where we're going for, what we're targeting, be it with a league or with a championship, or what our aims are here, but he says, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to, you know, we'll flip it, or we'll say, look, we'll see where we're going. But internally it could be, and again, they can go and say, look, I'm going to come out and I'm really happy with the performance here tonight. We know what we did within the 4 walls. We're going the right direction. This is working for us. But
publicly I'm going to come out and say, look, we still have doubts with this and that. And he says we don't, but it's no harm for people to maybe continue thinking that, you know.
Yeah, it's a good level of cute tourism. Speaking of which, Darragh O'Shea on the front page of Sports Wednesday in the Irish Times says, watch out Dublin, we're feeling good here in Kerry. Well, that's not the cute tourism we're used to seeing. Darragh's actually been quite bullish in some of his columns this summer, so I'm not sure is that a good sign or a bad sign, but he certainly feels that Kildare don't really stand a chance against Kerry on Saturday, and that Galway's incentive of avoiding Dublin will be enough to see them past Monaghan and Salt Hill. So he's highly fancying the fact that Kerry and Dublin are going to be playing on Saturday week at 5 o'clock, which will be a great occasion, but that's one hell of a hurdle this Saturday, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I suppose it's...
In terms of Salt Hill, that is.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's what's outside of Kerry's control, I think, is probably what's the challenge for them in terms of you'd like to think they're going to go down and take care of their own business against Kildare, but... again, there's a suspicion you could see could there be a Galway Monaghan draw in Salt Hill and still sees Galway avoid Dublin, I think. So,
like, what do you do if it's say 1 or 2 point game and okay, say it's level. Let's just say it's level with 60 minutes gone. Like, surely both teams at that point are happy. It's like Monaghan are like, right, we're not getting knocked out of the championship. Galway are like, well, we're top of the group.
Yeah, I think there's just too many variables. I think in theory people in the stands are sitting there going, this works for everyone, but I think from a player's perspective you can't think like that. I don't think there's any way. I think the guys, in terms of they're trying to, you hear them all talking about kind of get the most out of themselves, maximise themselves. The sub's going to come on, you're going to want to come on and play well, you're going to want to score, you're going to want to impress your manager, you're conscious that there's more bigger games coming. So as a Monaghan player you couldn't sit there saying, right, well, do we trust all these Galway players that are going to, you know, I think there's just too many variables in it, and like a Galway player comes on, a Monaghan player comes on and thinks, well, hang on, I have a chance here to kick us in front, I'm going to try and win the game for us, you know. And I don't believe that it's too big a game, there's too much at stake for it to be kind of put into a place where you can, maybe if they're in the 69th, 70th minute and it's a draw game possibly, but I think that far out, I think both teams are going to be going hard to win it, and certainly, you know, I think it's in both their interest to try and win it, in fairness. Yeah,
and if Galway do manage to do it, then Darragh O'Shea is correct in all of what he said there. The Irish Examiner then also leading with Kerry. It's not hard for me, but I do think it's hard for the players, Eamon Fitzmaurice, on dealing with criticism in the digital age. A couple of interesting comments here, Mossy, actually. It's carried in a lot of the newspapers, the Eamon Fitzmaurice comments this morning, and it's kind of nothing to do really with Kerry, but more to do with being a footballer in general at the moment. I'll just read this out for you. At the moment, I'm off from work, this is Fitzmaurice, so I can go into the bunker and be hard to be got at. I did that after the Galway game, but I'm from a slightly older generation than the lads in that I can actually put my phone out of my hand for 5 minutes. I think for the players, it's challenging when they're out working and meeting people, and so much of their lives are in their phones. It's hard to avoid a lot of it. And he's right. I mean, like, I'm sure everybody who's involved in the latter stages of the championship tends to delete the Twitter app and the Facebook app off their phone and stuff, but there's only so much you can avoid.
There is, yeah, and it's certainly a massive consideration, and it's a huge challenge for players at the moment. Mike Quirk wrote a really good article in the Irish Examiner yesterday talking about this in terms of the influence of phones and kind of in team environments, and even from WhatsApp to social media. And one of the things he referenced was Jason Witten, the Dallas Cowboys tight end, who's kind of transitioning into TV at the moment, and he's going to be one of ESPN's main American football analysts. And he actually said that. He said he'd kind of recommended to guys, he sees guys coming in after games and they could have had a really good game within a team environment, and as in from a performance point of view, but statistically it mightn't have been up to, and he says guys are turning on their mentions, and you can imagine the levels in America, but he was saying they're getting hundreds and hundreds of messages and negativity saying, well, you dropped this ball, you didn't do this, and he says they're actually reviewing themselves on how people outside the group are viewing their performance rather than people who actually know what's expected of them. And he says it's a massive challenge, and that's obviously on a kind of a much bigger scale, but it is, you'd see it, and even club level, even in, like, we'd get into the latter rounds of Dublin Senior Football Championship and it gets quite a bit of coverage, and you'd see guys, and even from our club point of view, but from an inter-county scale, going into this weekend now, inter-county players are going to be under quite, they come in now, and even with the clip rights and all that type of stuff, you can be on the bus and you're watching highlights of the game, you're watching, well, what did I do here in this big play, did I make a mistake, did I get a good score? Like, I'm sure Peter Duggan got on the bus after his score the other day, and it was, you know, there was everyone on the bus probably looking at it, and that's a feel good thing, but there's obviously a flip side to that as well, you know, so it is a massive challenge for guys. Yeah,
the Quirk article yesterday was really good, and I'm not sure, have you seen it yourself, where, because he referenced really the nature of the club player. I guess with the inter-county player there's a certain level, especially if you're in Croke Park, there's a level of control where you've all got to wait for the team bus and stuff like that, but say after training when lads are driving home themselves, it's like they just leave the shoes inside in the changing room, grab the shoes, get on the phone in the dressing room for most of their time in there. They're not chatting to their teammates. Like, I'm not sure, is that rampant at the moment, or if that actually matters?
I think it does matter. I suppose, look, it depends from where you come from, and I suppose the team I'm involved with, the St. Vincent's, we try and stay away from that. It's something we actually actively talk about as a group in terms of at different times of the year, if we're setting down kind of, well, what are we trying to achieve, what are we trying to do, how do we get there? And one of the ways of getting there is actually to be a good team and to be a good teammate, and you're not being a good teammate if you're sitting with your head in your phone in the dressing room and things like that. So it is something you'd certainly be aware of, and you'd certainly be kind of, it's not something you can kind of just say, oh well, sure, see what happens, and because guys will do that. And you know, I think when you're there with the group, you have to be there with the group. There's no point being in the room and scanning your phone in the corner or looking down thinking, well, how can I get out of here, or what am I doing, you know? So
it's fair enough to like install a no phones policy for the duration that you're with the team, isn't it? It's only like it's only 20 minutes either side, or half an hour either side of a game or a training session, isn't it? I
think so, yeah. Now we'd be kind of try and go away from it. My own belief is the more rules you set in a team environment, the more challenges you'll have, because guys are not going to break them. But if you're constantly telling them, you can't do this, you can't do that, you want guys not to have them for the right reason. So you're not coming in and collecting phones at the door and putting them in a bag. But again, ideally, if you're parking the car in the car park, leave your phone in the car, come into the dressing room, and when you're gone, you can look at it in the car again. You know, it's a small little nuance, but I think it's a different mentality, because at least if you know you're actively saying, well, hang on, I'm going to leave it here, I'm parking my phone for the couple of hours that I'm here, my mind is on what we're trying to do, we're trying to get better, we're trying to whatever we're trying to achieve. Whereas if you're coming in, you're ramming it into the corner of the bag, and then in between putting your boots on, you're saying, well, I'll have a quick look, and you know, little things like that. So I think it's it probably comes from the again, the mindset at the start of the year in terms of what's accepted, what's not accepted within a team environment. Yeah, definitely. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well. You can tweet us at Off The Ball, or comment on YouTube or Facebook if you happen to be watching there. What are you seeing in your club at the moment? Is it a similar situation to what Mike Quirk was talking about yesterday? The back page of the Times Ireland edition then goes with this story as well. Kerry players feeling stress. Mayo blow as coaches quit then. This is one which I don't think we've mentioned yet this morning. Two key members of Stephen Rochford's backroom team have quit, with a third selector, Tony McEntee, also expected to announce his resignation within the next month. So the Tony McEntee thing we're not sure of, but it seems that Donny Buckley and goalkeeping coach Peter Burke are going to step down after lengthy spells. This is Mike Finnerty. It's carried in, I think, the Star as well this morning. And Mike would always have his information from very good sources, so you can expect there to be two key members of Mayo's team definitely out. And by the sounds of things, it doesn't sound like McEntee's coming back either. Doesn't seem like it, no, and it's an interesting one. You'd imagine if this was the end of Stephen Rochford and the whole management team, they would have come out en masse and said, look, we've served our time, we've done our best, and we're kind of stepping away. So this would lend you to think that Rochford is keen to stay on himself, and between the guys it'll probably take a little time to wash out whether they left or whether they were kind of moved on themselves. But it seems to read that the two guys who've stepped away at the moment is by choice, you know, and it'll be up to Rochford then to go and try and put a new management team together as he looks to go forward. I think he signed one of the papers, he signed again, GA you sign, but in theory he's a 2-year deal from last October, so he's another year to run on that. So it looks as though he's going to try and put together a new management team for next year. Yeah, the signs are there that he's going to hang around. Do you miss Mayo from this summer? You would a little bit. You miss the madness a little bit, but again, it's one of those things. It's like you do like seeing new teams coming through. You like seeing new teams emerging, and it's one of those. I think when everyone looked at the Super 8s, it was hard to envisage the Super 8s not having Mayo in it, and not having. Should they be in Clarny this weekend if they were in it? Yeah, it would have been something different, you know. So it's so from that side you do, but again, it comes down to like maybe the year off, or well, not year off, but the kind of the end of the summer off might stand to them in the long run, and but in terms of the support that they bring and the kind of the little bit of uniqueness they have, I think it's the championship's probably a little bit quieter without them. Yeah, begrudgingly, I'm coming around to that point of view as well. We do miss the Mayo fans from every weekend in Croke Park. The other story here in the back of the Times Ireland edition, Ireland claim Bayern star 17. So Ireland, according to Gary Doyle here, it's an exclusive, they look set to win the three-way contest to secure the eligibility of a Bayern Munich 17-year-old Ryan Johansson. So as you can imagine, it's not from his father's side that he's Irish. He's born in Luxembourg. Johansson is featured in an underage international for Sweden, where his father is from. He qualifies for Ireland through his Mullingar-born mother, Christine McCarthy. He won the German under-17 Bundesliga with Bayern Munich last month, so he's a very promising player. And Gary Doyle here saying that Ireland are in the box seat to claim Mr. Johansson, so that will be quite the addition. Denmark having a Delaney in their team and Ireland having a Johansson in their team. The world is skewed at the moment. It's great, it's fantastic, so hopefully we claim his services. Lastly for me then, it's the Racing Post. It's
They're all out to smash the plate. That's a preview of the Galway plate there later on. And the back page is it's cricket. First test, England against India, gets underway at 11 o'clock this morning. You're looking at the tabloids and the Irish Daily Mail and the likes this morning?
Yeah, the Daily Mail have Kerry players again, back to Eamon Fitzmaurice talking about the Kerry players feeling the heat, and then some of the managers, any abusive managers in the Premier League this year or across the English leagues, they're saying they're going to get yellow and red cards to improve touchline behaviour. So maybe Jose be one of the few to try that out at the start of the league. But again, it's probably looking at the whole discipline in terms of, in soccer you see the way referees are treated in terms of from the players on the pitch, in terms of how they're communicated to, and referees are managers are obviously the starting point of that. So maybe it's one of these, it's a kind of a journey to see if managers can start behaving themselves a little bit better. Will it have a knock-on effect to players and how the respect levels with soccer players?
Yeah, what do you reckon? Like, is it going to work? Is this the sort of right way to go? Like,
it's one of those ones. Is it a story that's released in what are we now? Just turning into August at the start of the league, and they say, oh well, this is what we're going to implement. But is it actually going to happen, or is it going to be back to the couple of the handful of incidents during the year where somebody abuses the fourth official, and it's usually, well, it had been traditionally Wenger or Mourinho, high profile. Like, I don't know.
Pardew as well. Missing Wenger and Pardew are missing two key culprits here.
Yeah, so Jose will need some new backup in that area. But it's I don't know. Like, I do think there's an issue in soccer in terms of the respect level for referees. You see it in terms of, it's not, you don't need to be an expert lip reader to see what way some of the players talk to referees. And for me, and again, before any soccer people come in, GA have their own challenges to refereeing decisions, but in terms of I do think it's something that could definitely improve, and if this is one step towards doing it, I think it's probably a good thing.
Definitely, no question about that. You're right though, like it does, the GA do have their own problems as well. I guess it's just kind of, it's more in focus with the Premier League because there's just a higher volume of games on TV, and every little minute detail is caught. Like with McStay, if that was a league game with one camera at it, we might never have had the conversation about Kevin McStay, so that definitely changes things. The Herald are going with Jose as well this morning.
The Herald have Jose, and they're talking about him looking for Pogba and Lukaku to come back early. So they're saying he sends out an SOS, and he's looking for Lingard as well to come back, maybe Rashford. So it's hard to believe the Premier League starts. I think it's Friday week, and United are on the first evening. That's something else Jose's had him on about in terms of being out on the Friday rather than the Saturday or the Sunday. But
there's been not a peep really about the Premier League. Like, we were having this conversation out in the office yesterday. It must just be due to the fact that all the football writers, because England got so far into the World Cup, are now on their holidays.
They're on their couple of weeks off before the madness starts again. Yeah, a little bit, and I suppose Sky Sports are probably the only ones talking about it because that's all they've had all summer. So I think if you need your Premier League fixture, going to Sky Sports News. And again, the pre-season friendlies, like a lot of the teams are over in America, and there was over 100,000 people at United and Liverpool the other night. But again, what are you going to really learn from a pre-season friendly? Are you going to take any much stock from it? And
as an Arsenal fan, I'm reading into the fact that they beat PSG, as Arsenal are going to win the Champions League this year. So I'm reading all into it. It's time to get carried away.
Well, my Liverpool friends enjoyed Liverpool beating United 4-1 the other night.
I'm sure they did.
So I'm hoping that's the only time they get it this year. And just the other one on the Herald is on Liverpool, the new sign, and the goalkeeper Alisson, the Brazilian goalkeeper, and he looks like a bit of a unit in fairness to him. So he's got a bit of there'll obviously be expectation coming in on the price tag that he's arriving on, but you'd imagine he's going to be an upgrade on what Liverpool have had there over the past couple of seasons.
Definitely, it wouldn't be hard to do that.
No, it wouldn't have been. And then again, similarly, we've touched on these before. This is the Daily Star. So Titanic, this is more rather than Mickey Hart talking about the Sky Sports. It's just, I suppose, the level of the clash that's coming this weekend with Donegal up in Ballybuffet. And I think he realised his comments are effectively, most people thought Dublin were going to win the group, and with the experience that both Donegal and Tyrone had, that they would have overcome Roscommon. And he says, as it turned out that way, so it feels like he could see this winner take all game coming up. So they're obviously ready for it. It's something there. I think Tyrone, certainly in the past, have relished going into environments like this and trying to get a big performance, and you'd imagine this weekend is no different. And Donegal seem to have a couple of injuries, we might talk about it a bit later on, but in terms of particularly the McBurty one is probably a game changer for Donegal across the latter stage of the championship. They could probably get away without him in certain games, but you saw it against Dublin, they probably missed that class of finishing, and especially
when you look at the league game and his performance against Dublin.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the things they'll obviously be going into the Tyrone game. Kind of obviously, if you had McBurty, you're kind of looking at he's clearly a game changer in terms of what they can do going forward and where they can play other players as well. So but that's what Mickey Hart was looking forward to. And then back to United for a second. The Sun with an exclusive that the Red Devils, they'd want Zizou if Jose goes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like I hope that's true.
Well, you'd imagine this is just the textbook son. Well, we'll work out. Jose's frustrated at the moment of what managers are out there, because that was the one thing. Like, I'm not a big Mourinho fan as a United manager, and it's one of those. Well, if he goes, who do you get in to replace him? And when I came in today, I saw that and I said, okay, yeah, well,
that'll do.
You could buy into that for a while, all right, yeah. So, but that's what the Sun are saying. So if the Sun are saying it, it must be true. And again, back to Fitzmaurice and a bit on Rafa Benitez turning down a chance to get involved with Spain is what the Sun are also reporting here.
That's an interesting one. It says that the Spanish Football Federation president was contacted by Newcastle and was offered Rafa Benitez. Yeah. It's like, what the hell is that about?
Yeah, so whether Newcastle are trying to get him off the books, or Mike Ashley saw,
that's exactly what I thought.
Mike Ashley saw an out and said, well, hang on, maybe there's a chance for us to make a few quid on this here, you know. Different type of sports direct sale for the summer, maybe. Mirror Sport, again, they're reporting that PSG are looking to sign N'Golo Kante from Chelsea. £290,000 a week is what they're suggesting here, which is just, I suppose, mind-boggling money. And then also that Barcelona are looking to sign Simon Mignolet to go from what they're saying Liverpool's number 3 choice goalkeeper to be Barcelona's 2nd choice goalkeeper. So again, whether there's any truth in that would be interesting to see. And then the last couple, just in terms of some of the other papers. So the Guardian here, cricket story on the back, just in terms of the Joe Root has backed himself in terms of the potential for England to deliver a significant statement against India this summer. So that's from that side. And then the same thing here again, and this is the Daily Telegraph and just the expectation of the English in terms of their series under India, so how important it is for them. Yeah,
clearly the English press not too plussed with the idea that the Premier League is just around the corner either. It's cricket season over there, it's GAA season over here, and that is certainly what we're going to be chatting about next. We're going to get stuck into the Super 8's final round preview, but before all that, here is Andy Mitten speaking about Jose Mourinho. He was talking to Joe on last night's Off the Ball.
I am surprised at how negative he has been. I'm surprised at how unhappy he looks. I can understand some of his frustrations in that he's not got all the players that he wants to be working with, but it's always the same post World Cup when Manchester United come on the tours. If they're going to take the money from the sponsors in the United States, then they're going to want their pound of flesh, and that includes Mourinho, who is normally box office, coming over. When Jose Mourinho then says, I wouldn't have paid money to watch this game, I spoke to fans on the street in Ann Arbor on Saturday, and that quote was seeping through to them. And they're like, they don't want our money then. They don't want us to come back. You can bet your bottom dollar that people at Manchester United do not agree with that line, what he's saying. Now, Mourinho is entitled to go off on with his own opinions, and that can also make him so attractive to listen to, because he's the opposite of a dull manager who just talks in cliches. But is it really that bad? I just don't believe it is. I speak to the players. I write about Manchester United every single day, and I just do not think it is that bad. This is not a team or club brinkering on the verge of liquidation. Yeah. These are relatively minor issues. There are still very, very good players at that football club.
Jose Mourinho there, the subject of discussion with Andy Mitten on last night's Off the Ball. You're very welcome back. You can tweet us at Off the Ball. You can comment on the stream on Facebook or YouTube if you happen to be watching there. Give us all your comments on Jose Mourinho. We'll get to them with bona fide Manchester United fan Mossy Quinn a little bit later on in the show. But for the time being, we are talking about the Super 8s. It is a final round this weekend. A couple of crackers in store, particularly in Ballybuffet, Mossy. That is probably the game of the weekend. And as we were just saying there in the paper section, it's a very, very hard one to call.
It is very hard to call, and it is the game of the weekend. There's no doubt. Like the nature of the winner takes all, and I'm presuming this is when the GA came up with this structure, with these type of games in mind. You're going to provincial venue, you're going for such a big game, and it's something I'm really looking forward to, and I think it's set up nicely for the weekend.
So when it comes to a couple of injuries for Tyrone, obviously most of their full back line now seems to be gone. McNamee is a big doubt. McCarran is definitely gone for the season. On the flip side then, it looks like Lee Brennan's going to be back.
Yeah, it does, and again, I think going forward, it's just interesting for me. It's not so much the personnel that Tyrone have. It seems to be the manner in which they, like it seems at the moment, it's going to be Richard Donnelly's going to play full forward in every game, and it's either Conor McAlliskey or Ronan O'Neill. They kind of seem to, one or the other seems to play. They either come on for each other, and McAlliskey has been the guy starting and he's been playing well, but I'd be interested to see if they're a little bit more adventurous, and can you play two of them, and will possibly now Lee Brennan comes back into that equation, is he now one of three, or can you play a couple of them up there, and can you kind of go after it a little bit more? And I was up in Oman, it was a brilliant occasion when Dublin were up in Oman, it was a really, really good game, which I kind of felt, like I was obviously there from a Dublin perspective, obviously hoping Dublin were going to win, and they produced a performance, but I was looking, I expected Tyrone possibly to go after them a little bit more, particularly going into the last 15-20 minutes, and when you brought Ron O'Neill on, but he came on from McAlliskey rather than making maybe a bit more of an aggressive change. And that's why with Lee Brennan coming back in, does he have more trust in that? Can he play in a kind of a, can he play two or three of them up at the same time? And I think that's the thing for Mickey Harte this year. I think for me, it's been a bit surprisingly kind of I suppose refrained in terms of his attacking from going last year. They have their set system, they seem to play to the system, and it's slowly evolving, but there is times in games where you'd say, well look, could they really go after a team here? And I know they've put up big scores against different teams, but in tight games when they need to go and score, can he go and change that? Is there a different model that they can go with?
Yeah, what would be that different model?
Well, I think when you look at, and again, you look at, I would have played against a lot of Tyrone teams in the 2000s, and they was one of the best teams ever, and you might argue that he had a different skill set of players and different, but they had so much adaptability. They could play different ways. Like in terms of, we played them in a quarter final, and we were 5 or 6 up at half time, and they came out, they made up to 8 changes in terms of between, they made 3 or 4 substitutions, and they made a number of positional changes.
So, is this in the championship?
Yeah, in the quarter final in 2005, we were 110 to 8 points up at half time, and our message at half time was, you know, keep doing the same, you're playing well, keep performing. And that's all well and good if what you're playing against stays the same. But when we reviewed it after, there was up to 8 changes in that Tyrone team, and the second half we only scored 4 points. So we went from scoring 110 to scoring 4 points in the second half, and 2 of those were in the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game. And I remember looking at the time going, we weren't set up as a Dublin team at the time to make that many changes and to have that flexibility, and that was one of the massive attributes that Tyrone team had. But Mickey Harte was the coach behind that, he was the mastermind behind that, so he was obviously willing to say, well look, it's not working for us here, let's take a risk. Whereas you flip that to last year's All-Ireland semi-final when they were losing to Dublin, and you know, everyone in the ground at half time was saying, well, Tyrone will have to come out and do something different, and they didn't. You know, and that's the one going into this year, have they really changed? You know, again, even against Dublin were comfortable enough. It was 7-5 at half time, and okay, it was probably a pace of the game was slightly slower. Dublin are used to it. Was more physical. It was tough football. But in terms of Dublin, felt like they were in control for most of it. I don't think Tyrone got Dublin out of their comfort zone at any stage, and that's why you'd kind of look at these Tyrone teams now, and I'd wonder. And again, maybe it goes back to the personnel, and he's playing with what he has. But sometimes I'd certainly look at it and see, well, is there a chance to maybe try and that's what I mean, play. Can you play O'Neill, McAlliskey, Brennan? I'm not saying all 3 of them go into the same full forward line, but again, can you mix it up a little bit? It seems to be, well, if it's not him, it's him, so all you're doing is replacing one person for the other, but it's in the same system. So again, can you push more guys on? Can you play more traditional, like you look what Brian McGuigan used to do for him as a playmaking centre forward. You know, you could argue Petey Harte has that skill set, but he spends so much of his game coming up and down the pitch. Now maybe he's more of a runner than Brian McGuigan, and again, you're not comparing like for like, but could you play someone in that kind of playmaker role? And again, there's different challenges teams will set out to change that. You know, very few teams are going to let someone just dictate the style of play, but if something Tyrone haven't tried in a while and you introduce it, might take a team a while to half to realise what's going on here. Well, he's not playing a traditional role, and again, it's just that's something different that you haven't shown the opposition up until now. Yeah,
just to pivot for a moment there, just because you did mention the game in Oman, it makes sense to talk about it now. The fact that Dublin were happy enough with where they were at, and Tyrone, maybe if you're cynical, were happy enough to kind of save a little bit of face and not get hammered this year by Dublin. That might not be the truth. Like, you could see that they were going after the win, certainly at different times of the game. But when you get into this idea of Dublin passing the ball around and holding on to the lead that they have, personally, I think if you don't have a player like Diarmuid Connolly or Bernard Brogan from last year, you've got to adapt. Like, it's 2 of the greatest forwards we've seen this decade. So you're going to have to adapt to a certain extent. Other teams have got to chase them. Other teams have got to figure out how to stop that. And if Donegal or Tyrone are going to make it to an All-Ireland final, it's going to be against Dublin again. And chances are they will face Dublin with a couple of points up later on in the game, and they'll do the exact same thing. So how do you stop that? How do you? Jim McGuinness says you keep 10 men behind the ball, and you let 4 men or 5 men go and chase the ball at all times.
I don't know if that's enough, to be honest with you. I suppose the easiest way to stop it is not get yourself into that situation, is to try and be as aggressive as you can throughout. And it's the same with any team holding possession at the end of a game. Kerry did it to us again very, very well in a couple of games in the late 2000s, where they just held possession. What they're trying to do is draw you out, and then and Dublin did that. They kicked the score on the last play of the game and up in Omagh. But someone said to me at half time, there's a throw man standing behind me at the game up in Omagh, and at half time he says, "Oh no, this is going well. The game's been played on Tyrone's terms." And I was trying to work out, I didn't believe that to be the case. Like, Dublin were 7-5 up at half time, and it took a couple of really good long range scores from Tyrone. I think the cornerback McKernan kicked a brilliant score coming up to half time, did another one from distance as well. And you were kind of wondering, well, if it's been played on Tyrone's terms and Dublin are still 2 up, what way is the outcome going to go? And that's the way that the second half kind of went the same way. So, and Dublin are at a level now where they can play different styles. They can say, well, if you're going to get 15 men, we'll be patient, we'll go across and back. And you saw it against Donegal at the end. If Donegal push 4 or 5 guys up, well, what if Dublin have 6 or 7 or 8 guys back in that half of the pitch? 6 or 7 guys, you see it in soccer all the time. If you centre forward chasing between the 3 in the back 4, they're just going to pass it around, and good teams will be able to do that. So you could have 4 guys working really, really hard, but they might have a bit of an element of a headless chicken run around, where they're kind of just trying to split space and trying to cut off. But again, when you've guys like Kieran Kilkenny who's so comfortable on the ball, Brian Fenton, Keane O'Sullivan, these type of footballers who are, not only are they very good footballers, but in terms of their game intelligence, where guys are going, where they need to put the ball, and the spacing of the Dublin team as well, the width they keep within the pitch. A few Jack McCaffrey hanging out in the touchline, or now Brian Howard or someone else, Niall Scully, and they get the ball out there. It's very, very hard for 4 or 5 guys to shut that down. So I think any team, and it is one of the hardest things to do in terms of the levels of communication you need to spend a lot of time working on it. But any team that's getting that are up against an opposition who are trying to kill the game, you're going to have to everyone's going to have to press up at a certain time. Now, there's obviously a risk that's associated with that, but that's where, again, good coaching comes in, good understanding from the players of what's needed in a certain situation. Who
do you think are the best team equipped to be able to execute that, to be able essentially to beat the Dubs?
This weekend will probably tell a lot in terms of, I'd imagine from what I've seen all year, I think Galway are probably the best equipped team out there in terms of again, the fact that they're not as possibly one-dimensional as some of the other teams. You look at some of the other teams, they'd like to play that counter-attack style. I don't know that Dublin are going to get beaten by a team that's playing a counter-attack style. So for me, it has to be a team that's willing to go at Dublin a little bit more, possibly a Galway or a Kerry. I like the fact that Galway can mix it up a little bit. They've got Comer inside, who's obviously someone you can play long, direct ball into, and then they've got the running game between obviously Shane Walsh and Brannigan and these guys. So I think the ability they have, and they're solid defensively, they have a strong midfield, so they have a lot of things going for them. They've obviously shown in the league this year that they're a very, very good team, and they've continued that into the championship. So to be honest, I think there's huge challenges coming for Dublin. I know the Kerry party there probably dismissed the semi-final coming up, but I think Dublin are going to have a big challenge in the semi-final, whoever comes out of that side. And you've seen the road Monaghan have taken through it as well. Monaghan were the only team to beat Dublin in the league in Croke Park this year as well. So Monaghan will come, if it is Monaghan, Kerry, I think whatever way it comes out this weekend, I think we're going to be set up for a couple of really big games.
The thing is, if Monaghan do get through, and like just being devil's advocate to that point, you look at the big games Dublin have been given in championship after their last championship defeat in 2014, and it would mean Kerry and Mayo are both out. The two teams that have been able to put them to the pin of their collar are out, and like Monaghan have done that to the Dublin in the league in previous years, and obviously we saw what happened to them in the championship last year. Like, you do wonder, with Kerry and Mayo absent from the championship in the last 4, is there enough wherewithal in the remaining 3 teams to actually give Dublin a really good game? And I'm talking Kerry 2016, Mayo last year, Mayo in 2016, obviously over both games. Like the real intensity, because I do feel, and maybe it's just being very cynical, I do feel that there was an element about Dublin against Tyrone and Donegal where they could have gone to a much higher pitch if they needed to.
Yeah, and it's the big question that's left this year, and it is, and I think that was one of the things, like Mayo have obviously proven in the last couple of years they've been a fraction away from getting over that, and I think there's, whether it's a historical element, that Kerry always bring that in terms of, and from a mental point of view, you get the impression that, and maybe Dara's comment or his article today where he's saying about it, would you be surprised if, like, there's an element to me that wouldn't be surprised if Kerry didn't make the semi-final, But then there's also another element to me. If Kerry did make a semi-final and come up and shot the lights out against Dublin, you know, you'd look at their team and maybe they're built to play in Croke Park in terms of, and again, even the talk of this Kerry team about how the young guys are doing, for me, the young guys are delivering. They're not the issue at the moment. You know, there's probably a couple of other guys that need to step up. Maybe some of those middle-aged guys in terms of the kind of mid-20s, late 20s, maybe they're the guys that need to step up and give a bit of backup to to O'Shea and White and Clifford and these guys who've been excellent to date, you know. So there's an element of that with Kerry to kind of, can they get through this weekend in terms of the results go their way and they do what they need to do against Kildare, and if they can, you know, Fitzmaurice will be coming into that, if they did come into a semi-final against Dublin, looking at it saying, well, this is, you'd imagine what they've been working towards for the last 6, 7, 8 months. Kerry are the type of team who look at the bigger picture. They're not looking at next week. Monaghan have probably had to go through this championship on a, well, let's get to next week, get to next week, and obviously this week is no different. They have to get through Salt Hill to have any chance of having it, you know, so they'll have a 6-day turnaround. It'll be a much bigger challenge for Monaghan, I think, going in against, if they did go in against Dublin, because it'll be very much, they will be on a bit of a roll, they'd have momentum with them, but in terms of their preparation, in terms of for the specific challenge of Dublin, whereas I'd imagine a lot of the work Kerry have done throughout the year have kind of been with this in mind. Yeah,
it does feel sometimes that we read too much into the likes of 2009 when it comes to this supposed great Kerry performance that's going to come if they get to come up against Dublin, that, you know, they can do it when it matters, like coming back through the qualifiers after defeats to Cork down through the years and stuff. It's a very different Kerry team, like the likes of Dara there. I mean, the real sense of a game that will never pass them by when it really matters, sort of thing. And you mentioned some of the big lads that haven't stepped up in recent weeks. Granted, that's a good situation to be in if the young lads are actually performing well, but ultimately there's a bit of hope there that isn't based in a whole pile of form that we've seen over the last 2 seasons. No, not only is it a different Kerry team, it's a very different Dublin team. Sure. Like, this Dublin team is a far superior team than the 2009 team, you know, and it was and again, it's just the levels Dublin have got in the last couple of years, and they're an incredibly well coached team. You look at the way Dublin, again, you can talk about playing against different styles and how comfortable they are, and it has taken them a little bit of time. They've learned from playing against teams, and that's what I mean, for a couple of years, not for a couple of years, but for a certain time they would have found it a bigger challenge playing against teams to get 14 men and hit them on the counter attack. Now it feels like, I don't know that it's going to take something unique for a team to play like that and beat Dublin. I think at the moment, I think Dublin are so controlled in those environments. They're good on the ball, they make good decisions on it, they don't leave themselves too exposed at the back. If they do, it's a kind of it's a split second window. It's not a case of where they're getting caught 4 and 5 times a half, you know. So I think this Dublin team is probably different. So I think any team that you kind of need to be willing to come out and go toe to toe with Dublin for a certain extent. I don't know that you can play that kind of counter attack game against them. It's huge testaments to Jim Gavin, the way they've evolved. Not even, like, we talked about comparisons with 09 there, that's almost a decade at this point, but even if you compare it to the 2013 team or 2015 to a certain extent, I know the final didn't really represent the way that Dublin team played because of the conditions that day, but the way they've altered their style, the way they've had to just hold on to the ball when they need to, is very different to the swashbuckling style we've seen in 2013, and it's incredible when a lot of the personnel is the same and the manager is the same. It is, and again, to me, it goes back to the coaching and to the level of detail they go into, and they're continuously trying to evolve. They've won the last couple of All-Irelands, but they're not sitting there saying, well, what we're doing is enough, it's not good enough, in terms of if they keep doing the same thing, they're going to get caught, so they have to keep adding different strings, and obviously they're introducing new players here and there, and you've seen the likes of Brian Howard coming in, and Niall Scully. They've added a lot to the group. On Merchant this year has now come in, and again, outside of Dublin, he probably wouldn't have been well known, and the management have probably taken not a chance on him, but they've obviously put their faith in him, and it's been rewarded. And again, that comes down to the management not saying, well, look, let's sit and say, well, look, these guys delivered for us last year, let's keep going with the same thing. And so when you're analysing Dublin now, you're looking at the Dublin team and you're saying, well, hang on, what are these new guys doing? How do we look to counteract that? And it just makes them continuously harder to kind of go up against. Yeah, definitely. One of the teams they might be playing before the end of the summer is Galway, and I'm delighted to introduce Paul Conroy, their midfielder, to the show this morning. Good morning to you, Paul.
How are you doing, boys? Good morning, Chi. How are you getting on?
Very well, thanks. So we wanted to chat to you, obviously, about the injury. It's almost 3 weeks since that clash with Kerry in Croke Park. I presume you're well underway in terms of rehab, in terms of recovery. You've almost settled into a pattern where you can start to move forward a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just over 2 weeks now post-op. So kind of getting used to the pain a small bit, and it's, in fairness, it's gone down a fair bit since the first week. So yeah, like, you know, I've started exercises with the physio and seen the doctor a couple of times, and, you know, I've been back in around the Galway camp and stuff like that, which is, you know, which is great to get back in as well. been talking to a couple of players as well who, footballers and soccer players as well who've had a similar injury as well before. So I was just on to Shamie Coleman there yesterday, who gave me a shout. So it was nice to hear from him, and he had a very similar injury to myself. So just getting a couple of tips off them boys, which is great.
What did Seamus say?
He just kind of was just saying that he had a very positive mindset straight away, and he found that that made an awful big difference. A lot of people were kind of saying to him that that he mightn't be ever the same again or as good as he was, but he kind of used that as motivation to help him come back and stuff like that. So I think he was saying to me that he trained with the first team in Everton 6 months after the injury there, which happened obviously against Wales in March. So it was great to hear from someone like that, and it definitely would, it gives you that bit of motivation to try and get back possibly earlier than than expected, or it obviously mightn't work out like that, but it was good to hear from someone like that.
Yeah, absolutely, fair play to him. So just talk to us about the specifics of the injury. It's a fracture on the tibia and fibula on the left, and then there's a hairline fracture on the fibula on the right leg, but you're able to stand on the right leg?
Yeah, exactly. So I suppose I didn't kind of half do it, so I was do it properly what I was going to do it. But so the right leg isn't overly bad. I can hop around on crutches and things like that, just as long as I can tolerate it myself. So if it's getting obviously too sore, it's time to get off the crutches. But that's just a hairline fracture on the fibula. It feels almost like bad bruising, but when they x-rayed it, there was actually a hairline fracture there. So as I said, the right leg is it is obviously broke, but it's not half as bad as the left. The left was the leg I got the surgery on, and there was surgery given to my tibia. There was a nail put down the middle of it there. Sounds lovely, and the fibula as well. It's just left to recover itself. But I'm not in a cast or anything like that. And when I'm heading out, I have a boot there that I can put on, and that protects me. So it's not too bad in that sense.
Yeah, because I can imagine what you must have thought when the prognosis comes through that you've broke both legs. I mean, it's incredibly rare. Like, immediately you're probably thinking about your immediate mobility, but having that, it's even a small kind of consolation of being able to hop around on crutches is surely a big difference.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Like, I mean, when they say it to you first, like, it's it's more mentally challenging. Obviously, the pain is there and stuff like that, but you can take things to get rid of the pain or whatever. But mentally challenging, you kind of have to just accept it. So I was in the Mater Hospital there for a couple of days. In fairness, they took great care of me in there, and it's just around the corner to Croke Park as well, which is ideal.
I found it interesting, just already you're talking about the mental challenge of it, Paul, and it's interesting, even something Shamie said to you yesterday, that you'd be 6 months, he was back on the pitch within 6 months, and already you can see your mindsets. Obviously the first few days you're kind of dealing with the issue of in terms of the pain and just getting through the first few days, but you've already kind of a bit of a mindset in terms of looking forward towards how you're going to get back playing and back physically fit in terms of from a football perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's no point obviously feeling sorry for yourself. Like, the first couple of days, as I said, they're tough, and I suppose they're the days that you kind of just have to mentally accept it. And after that, like, you're looking straight away. You're looking at what can I do, what can I move, what other parts of my body can I do a bit of exercise with. I suppose a danger in these injuries is that the muscles around the injury, I'm sure you know yourself, Mossy, from playing, the muscles around the injury kind of, they become very soft and they become very inactive, and that's a danger itself. So it's important to kind of keep at the other exercise, so whether it be moving the ankle or the quad or the knee or the glutes, so that's the kind of stuff I'm at the minute. And it's grand. Like, that's the only kind of stuff you can control, really. So I don't really have any other choice.
Paul, what's your recollection of the incident itself? Like, I'm sure the pain is just excruciating at that point, so you can't recall a whole pile, and it's fairly blurry. But of what you can remember, what's your picture of what happened?
Yeah, I just remember I suppose if you remember the day, it was very wet and very skiddy in Croke Park. So I just remember a ball coming across from the sideline, and it was kind of a 50-50 ball. And I suppose the way the weather was, if it was a dry day, I wouldn't have slid in, and I suppose Sean O'Shea probably wouldn't have slid in the way the two of us did. We just kind of slid in with our legs sort of in front of us, and his knees hit my shins, but it very easily could have been sort of my knees hitting his shins. It was just unlucky for me, I suppose, and lucky for him. And then I just looked down then, and I kind of seen a lump sort of sticking out somewhere where it shouldn't have been, and I said to myself, okay, I'm in trouble here. I better stay down and not try and get up. So the medical team were on then straight away and stuff. So in fairness, they get moving fairly quickly when an incident like that happens.
Yeah, like obviously when you see that, you're in big trouble. But what are you feeling at the time? Like, is there an excruciating pain above anything else you felt that suggests that this is a horrendous injury you've just sustained?
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me that. To be honest, I don't really kind of remember it being really, really, really sore. I think the body just sort of goes into shock. Like, it was obviously sore at the time, but I think it's just trying to take your mind off it, And I had a couple of people come over to me and they were just kind of chatting away to me at the time, and they were like, just breathe. And they gave me I'm not sure what the name is there, but it's kind of a green whistle you sort of blow into, and I think that takes away a good bit of the pain and stuff like that. So I'm sure it was very, very sore, but I think the body sort of just goes into shock, and I don't know, does it go into kind of protective mode or something like that? Because as I said, I don't remember an excruciating pain, but I'm sure it was there.
It's probably one of those fortunate things. You never want something like that to happen to you, but if it does happen, you want it to happen in Croke Park, where, like that, you see you're getting carried off on the motorised cart and you're 2 minutes from the Mater Hospital and you're getting the best of treatment, rather than being stuck at one of the provincial venues, possibly where you're on the pitch a bit longer and it's harder to get in and out. So I suppose if there's one positive to take from it, from where it happened, that would definitely be one of them. Yeah,
definitely. I think it happened in like the 20th minute, and I had my phone with me, so I actually watched the second half in the A&E department on the RTE player on the phone, so that kept my mind occupied for a while. Funnily enough, you said that actually one of our players, Fintan O'Curran, this happened to him late last year, and it happened to him in a championship relegation game. In a bad wet day out in Connemara. So I think he was a lot longer lying on a pitch. Yeah. Waiting to be looked after and have to wait for an ambulance to come. Whereas in fairness, I was lucky. I was in and out and gone in the Mater Hospital in 10-15 minutes.
Yeah, that is certainly one of the positives you could have come on to from that situation. Like you mentioned, the mentality here and the mental process of recovering from this, and the advice that Seamus Coleman gave you. I presume the fact that Galway are still in the championship is helping with that a little bit. I presume you're in and out chatting to the lads, and you're kind of even just hanging around training maybe, or having conversations with Kevin Walsh that kind of keeps you mentally fresh and keeps you ticking over a little bit. It sort of feels like you're still involved. It's not too detrimental.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people were kind of saying, is it harder because you're in the championship, or would it be easier if you're knocked out? No, definitely not. It's great being still in the championship. I went in back training there last Saturday for the first time, and now obviously I wasn't training. I was just in with the physio and stuff like that. But it's great. It's great to see the lads. It's great to be looking forward to an All-Ireland semi-final. Obviously the Monaghan game this weekend comes first, but it's a great buzz around. And you can kind of help the lads in maybe doing a bit of video analysis, or doing, helping them in a different way than before. And it's great. Kevin's great. He's always on to me, and he's always keen to get me involved in different ways and stuff like that. So, that gives you encouragement as well. Instead of just being left aside, if you get me, that's not the way it's been at all.
Is that something that's been a feature of Kevin Walsh's time in charge, that the players are very much called upon in terms of those video analysis chats anyway, that it's kind of a two-way street? It's not the management team preaching to the players, it's conversations happening.
Yeah, in fairness, and I think that's the way forward, really. I think, I suppose it's the players' team, really, and the players have to drive it on, because, once you go across or onto the pitch, it's the players that are in charge, really, and there's only so much a manager can do. So I think the more that the players take it on and drive things on themselves and take ownership and leadership, then I think the better the situation you'll be in, and the better prepared you'll be on match day.
How is everything in the camp at the moment? I presume they're flying. I presume they're sky high. Obviously, you mentioned this Sunday. Just because you're through doesn't mean you're going to take the Sunday easily. In fact, avoiding the dubs is a pretty big carrot, and I'm sure they're going for the win this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously Monaghan are going to come down fighting for their lives. It's it's do or die for them. But what, something that we've been focusing on all year, and it might sound like all GA players are probably saying the same thing, but we do generally take one game at a time, and we've only lost one game this year, which has been to Dublin in the league final. And there's no way that we'll be trying to rest up lads or take it easy this weekend, because you just can't do that in championship. So we'll be treating Monaghan with the same way we'd be treating any other game, and the result will take care of itself then. And yes, we're in the semi-final the week after, but still, it will go against what we've been at all year if we were to try and change things up for this weekend, or try and maybe put out kind of a half a strong team or anything like that. So we'll be treating it with the same way we've been treating all the games.
Yeah, you mentioned the league final there. How much focus was put on that result and in terms of analysing that game? Because obviously there was a big break then before the Mayo game and the championship in May. Like, has that been a focus of improvement this year, that one loss has been held up as something that you can look at and work on?
Yeah, like definitely. I mean, I suppose you'd analyse all the games in areas where you can learn from it, and areas where maybe you did well and that you're trying to keep doing again. But I suppose that was our first time playing against Dublin really in the last couple of years. We haven't been as successful as to be playing them in the latter ends of the championship. So it was a good test for us at a fairly high stage. In fairness, it was great to play them. We played them obviously in Pearse Stadium, but it's probably a different test playing them in Croke Park. We did that, and I suppose to be areas of that game we were really disappointed with. I think they went down to 14 men in the second half, and we never really took advantage of that. But there was definitely a lot of learnings to do from that game, and it was a brilliant test for us. And you kind of see where you're at really when you play Dublin and Croke Park. You kind of test yourself and see where you're at as a team.
To what extent would Kevin Walsh and the lads love to get another crack at the Dubs before the end of the summer?
Yeah, look, I'm sure the lads now would love to get another crack at them, So I suppose we just have to keep minding our own corner until that challenge comes. And if we win this weekend, we'll have a different challenge in the semi-final, and who knows, we might get a crack at them later on in the summer. And I suppose, please God, if we keep winning and minding our own corner, well then I suppose Dublin, there's a good chance they'll come through on the other side, and we might see them then later on in the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we let you go then, what's next for you on a personal level? I see you're starting a new job in September, although the injury might hamper your involvement there. Yeah,
so I was supposed to start I'm a secondary school teacher, so I was supposed to start in Galway College in September, but that's not going to happen now for a couple of, I suppose it'll be possibly 2 months first, and then seeing how it goes after that. Then I'm not sure how long it'll be. I suppose you just have to wait to get the confirmation of the surgeon and things like that. But I was talking to the principal and stuff like that, and it is what it is, and there's not much you can do about it. You just have to get on with it, and I'll be trying to recover as best as I can to put myself in the best position to go back working and then back training as well and things like that.
You probably need to be as fit going back into a school as you do onto a pitch. You'll get less sympathy off students than you would off opposition teammates or opposition players. So I'd say you definitely need to be fit going back in there anyway.
Yeah, in fairness, there'll be plenty of slagging now when I come back, and I'm sure a few of them will be showing me the video of where I got injured and things like that. But no, it's all good banter.
Can you do most of your rehab now in Galway, or are you backing over to Santry, say in Dublin?
No, so I've been transferred to a surgeon in Galway there, Fintan Shannon, but I would have been I got done in the Mater Hospital by Mr. Murphy, his name was, so he transferred me to Fintan Shannon in Galway there, so it's handy. It's only 20 minutes in the road there.
Right, okay. Well, the very best of luck with all the rehab, Paul. I really appreciate you coming on the show this morning, and best of luck to Galway at the weekend.
Yeah, thanks a million, boys.
Paul Conroy there. Great words there. It's fantastic to hear Seamus Coleman was in touch with him as well. It's almost like, we all know at this point that the mental battle that you face when you face these long-term injuries is almost the hardest part once that first excruciating first couple of weeks is gone. And I'm sure Seamus appreciates what the journey he has in front of him. So it's great to hear that he's getting in touch with him.
It is, it's brilliant. And again, that was one of the things I remember from, it was one of the documentaries, or it could have been Paul O'Connell's book, but I remember there was a vision of him when he pulled his hamstring off the bone and he's on the ground, he's punching the ground, and he was asked after, was it the pain? He said it was nothing to do with the pain, it was the realisation that I wasn't going to play for the rest of the year, and he said I was done, and he says that was what the real pain was. It was the mental anguish of knowing my leg is not going to work, for me to be able to perform. So and I think that's similar to what Paul, like the physical pain lasts on the pitch, and he's obviously it can be dealt with over the coming hours and days, but in terms of what you're facing into and the road ahead is obviously the biggest one. And sports people, in terms of they rally around each other brilliantly, and it is brilliant to hear. Like, it's kind of testament to Seamus' character that he took his time out to kind of get in contact with him, and hopefully Paul makes a full recovery similar to Seamus.
Yeah, definitely. Did you experience any injuries like that?
Thankfully not to that extent, no. I fractured my metatarsal at the time. I had to get a screw put into my foot, alright, but that was it certainly wasn't at the same level as that, and it was I actually did it, we were training in the winter of, I think it was 2010, and it was snow and we couldn't get any pitches, so we were training on Dollymount Beach, and whatever way I stood into I think it was like a groove of someone's foot, and my foot kind of just did that, and I broke my metatarsal. But it was a January to May. I was back in time for championship, but it was again just up, get a screw put into it, and I think when it was in the warm up as well, and when I was hobbling out, I think a lot of the lads were like, he just doesn't want to do this session here this morning. It was a gale blowing and it was like a sandstorm, but I arrived down the boot a few days later, and they were like, oh, okay, fair enough. So
yeah, I'm sure Paul Conroy is looking ahead to next summer with Lee at the moment. He should be back by then, and it's great to see the recovery is well underway. It is, of course, Salt Hill this weekend, Galway against Monaghan. As we kind of established there, Galway are clearly going for the win on Sunday. Will they get the win?
Yeah, I suppose I think they will. I think the level they've been performing at, and if they bring that, it's a mental challenge for Galway this weekend, in the sense that they know that they've likely have a semi-final coming up. But they need to kind of take care of their own business. So it's just to try and not let their minds drift and say, well, hang on, do we have a game in 6 days? At the moment, they don't have a game in 6 days. They need to make sure they go in and perform, and they've been very good at that this year. And again, Paul Conroy said it is one game at a time, and I think teams genuinely do buy into that, and it can be frustrating for people watching and listening, kind of saying, yeah, but you don't really. But teams actually, when they're in that mindset, that's where they get their best performances, and Galway seem to be delivering on that. You've seen that to proof this year in terms of the results. So based on that, I think they will get what they need against Monaghan. Yeah,
Dara was saying there this morning that Monaghan shouldn't expect to have the same amount of joy out of Conor McManus or even Rory Beggan this weekend, and that when you look around, he's still beating him with the old stick, that the rest of the supporting cast aren't good enough to win a game like this. I'm not sure, is that a bit harsh on the likes of Jack McCarran and Conor McCarthy?
Yeah, it probably is a little bit harsh. This is I think it is a good Monaghan team. I don't think that they're I think they probably have a little bit more in them as well. But I don't think it's a negative that it's very hard for everyone to get to the level of Conor McManus, sure. And even the performances of Rory Beggan has produced so far this championship. So they do have Carl O'Connell's been excellent, Conor McCarthy's been excellent. They've had some really good Vinnie Corey's been very solid as well. The Wiley's in the full back line. So they do have quality throughout that Monaghan team. They've probably added a little bit of strength and depth through the qualifiers, in the sense that they've tried different guys in different games, and people have come in and produced performances as well. So it is a big step up, I think, going in against Galway this weekend. But I don't think it's fair to kind of write Monaghan off. I think are the sporting cast good enough is probably going to be found out this weekend. Yeah, well, it is a 6 o'clock throw-in in both those games in Group 1 of the Super 8s this Saturday. They're in Salt Hill and they're in Killarney. The other two games then, 3:30 on Sunday, Ballybuffet and Croke Park, the venues. It is time to turn to the Galway Races. It is day 3 at Ballybrit, and Johnny Ward is on the line. Good morning, Johnny.
Good morning, Eoin.
So talk to us about yesterday, Riven Light, the horse that came back from the abyss, really. Willie Mullins couldn't believe that the horse was running again, let alone winning again.
Yeah, it was a hell of a performance by horse and trainer. He won the race last year, and he just got a real whack from the handicapper because of that, and he'd won subsequent races as well. Probably should have won on the Sunday of Galway last year, but for just bad luck in running. But he fractured a pastern then when he went to Melbourne earlier in the year, and I remember actually talking to the trainer that day, and he was very kind of matter of fact about it. He just said it is what it is, and we hope to get him back, but he wasn't particularly confident. And he rocks up in Galway after they gave him time off. They took the kind of pins out of his leg that they'd inserted, and he got a really cool ride by Danny Mullins. But the weight carrying performance from the draw, it was really amazing from Willie Mullins, and he's won the 2 big flat handicaps this week so far for a jumps trainer. He's had 4 winners already. He looks a shoe-in for the champion trainer, Gong. But Riven Light, I mean, for a horse who was hurdling, he's really taken to the flat. And it was just more evidence of Willie Mullins' genius, really. He was sent off 11-1, wasn't ignored in the betting, but great ride from Danny as well, his nephew. And another big success for the Mullins. And they had Emmett and David having winners in the card as well.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit about Emmett Mullins. He had a winner yesterday, as you mentioned there. Is he an up-and-comer? Is he going to be the next big thing?
He's certainly up and coming, yeah. He probably came to a bit of prominence earlier on this year when at Tramore, 2 of his horses nearly landed a major double, both very well backed, and the horse in the bumper was just touched off. And Emmett trains more or less beside where Willie trains there in Bagnallstown. He's a nephew of them. His father, George, would have a kind of a well-established haulage business, brings the horses to the race and all that. And Emmett won the bumper on the Monday, and he won the first race, or rather the second race yesterday with Stephen's Green. And that was a race notable for Chateau Conti falling at the first, and in the first race the favourite fell at the first as well. So I know a lot of people who backed both of them, and it was a hell of a start when your first 2 races you backed a faller at the first. But Emmett St. Stephen's Green took advantage, and he's gradually building up patronage. He's probably a trainer who's a bit shy on numbers at the moment, but he started off so young. I think people are I suppose sussing him out a bit, but he gets a lot of help. He's access to he's access to Willie's gallops as well from time to time, and he has great help from his first cousins Danny and David.
Yeah, it's certainly good genes there as well, always helps. So today, the Galway Plate, the feature, it's 7:20, Johnny. Is that an unusual time? I think it's the first evening start in a long time we've seen for this race.
Yeah, the Plate crowd has been down, actually. It's the iconic race, really, of the whole meeting, but the Plate crowd has been one of the poorest of the week. It's really struggled relative to the Friday, which has become a real sort of social occasion. So to counter that, they've made it an evening meet, basically, instead of it being a day meet. And I think it's a gamble worth taking. I just think more people will be able to go, rather than finish work, I suppose, at 4:30 or 5 o'clock and then rock up. And even if you miss the first race or two, the Plate isn't on until 7:20, sponsored by the Tote this year as well. And it's going to be a really deep renewal, but I expect the crowd will be significantly up. It was down yesterday on the Tuesday of last year by a couple of thousand. It was up on the Monday, so it's slightly down on aggregate for the week so far relative to last year, but I think they'll get a bit of a bump today.
Yeah, so is it fair to say that it's going to be Willie Mullins against Gordon Elliott? Willie's got 5 horses in the race, Gordon Elliott with 4, and Mullins with the favourite.
Maybe, but Henry de Bromhead I think has 5 as well, and
right.
Obviously JP McManus is very strongly represented, and the aforementioned Joseph O'Brien, he's definitely interesting with Slow Motion. She was 3rd in the race last year. She was only a 5-year-old mare, so she was quite inexperienced. And I think this year she may have that little bit more know-how, and the fact that she's clearly been laid out for the race. Barry Geraghty is riding her as well, so that would be interesting. His relationship with JP McManus seems to have evolved a little bit. He's not riding maybe as many McManus horses as he was when he had the retainership. But this is a really tough race. It's the top level of handicaps. It's very hard to get into it anymore. You have to be rated like 141 to get into this year's race. So it's become a bit compressed in the sense of, you'll have a lot of the bigger connections. It's not maybe the people's race as much as it was, but such as just the prize money has gone up to the extent that, $250,000 for the race this year, and it's obviously become a big draw. And I think Slow Motion might be the one. We've other very interesting runners as well. Colleen O'Derry, Henry de Bromhead and Brian Cooper. Brian Cooper riding for Jigginstown. It was this time last year that Brian Cooper was more or less let go as Jigginstown's top jockeys. Hasn't ridden much for them since, but they haven't... I suppose there are no grudges, and they've just gotten on with it. And Brian is back today, and that'd be really interesting if he could win that race. There'd be plenty of emotion there. Jury duty as well for Davy Russell and Gordon Elliott. He's another second season novice. He's one I definitely have my eye on, but it's seriously competitive. Definitely there'll be better betting races, I think, today than this one.
Yeah, just on that Brian Cooper point, it's a very interesting career arc, and there's plenty of time left for him to come back to prominence once again. Do you think this could be the start of something today? Do you expect it to be the start of something regardless of the result?
It's hard to know. I mean, obviously a Kerry man like yourself, Owen, and he would have been highly touted down your neck of the woods when he eventually kind of came through, and that was during Desi Hughes' reign, and his trajectory was totally up, but he suffered some really horrific injuries, notably at Cheltenham and riding Clarkham. And, it wasn't a major surprise when he lost the Jigginstown job, but he's developed a good relationship with Paul Nolan. I think Brian just needed to work a bit harder as well. His talent was never really in question. It was just that, he was probably just riding maybe too much kind of quality over quantity, and turning down maybe bad rides, just in the sense that he didn't feel that he should be riding bad horse. But I do think you have to graft. We spoke about Rachel Blackmore. You do need to get the air miles in, and you just need to get as many mounts as possible. So Brian, I think if he had a good Galway, I think it would really be a good lift, and this would be a hell of a story for him because he hasn't had many rides.
So that's the Galway Plate. That's at 7:20 this evening. You mentioned that the other races are probably worth a look in terms of the betting. What are you looking at? Any tips?
Yeah, I like Biddy the Boss in the 6:10. Gavin Cromwell's had a very good week. Dublin, Wolverhampton, and second in Galway on Monday night. And I really do like Biddy the Boss. I suppose plenty of Glenroe fans or anyone going out with a tyrannical partner will like the fact that Biddy the Boss is 20-1 as well. Biddy the Boss is probably well handicapped in her bumper form. I think she's just waiting for a big delivery. Gavin has a good record in Galway, and Breen Kane taking a few pounds off her back. I think she's a really good chance. She's my bet of the day anyway. It's been a tough week so far, I must say, though.
Yeah, the play spot didn't come up yesterday, but today's another day, Johnny. What are you looking at?
today's another day. As my attitude to gambling, especially at these festivals, is, if it's going badly, it can always get worse. And we've 5 more days, but we're going to go with the play spot. Slightly fatalistic attitude on, but such is life. It's going to be a 31-cent selection today, which is 31 by 64 options, because it's 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 4, which works out at 64. So I'll give my selections for today. Race 1, we're going with number 5. Race 2, we're going with 5 and 12. Race 3, we're going with 10 and 16. Race 4, we're going with 9 and 13. And race 5, which is the place, the toughest one of all, 4, 8, 11 and 21. And we're going with 4 and 11 in race 6. So there are the 6 races for today, and 30 grand guaranteed pool, obviously. And it's been, I think the first night the play spot paid over €300, so it's definitely achievable, and we just have to keep going, and hopefully today it might deliver. Although it is tough, it's tough, and the place, you could be gone by the first race, but if we're alive by the plate, we'll dream.
Looks like it's still lashing over there, Johnny.
Yeah, it's quite grey here in Salt Hill, as you can see. But it's not as rainy as it was yesterday morning. It was kind of typical Galway weather on as well. It just, you had 4 seasons in a day. It was windy, sunny, very, very wet at times. But the crowd was slightly down. But it didn't actually rain much during racing. And the ground has held up very well because it's been such a dry summer so far. And great vibe around the town, I suppose. As the week goes on, people will start talking more about the football and the hurling at the weekend. And you can tell there's because of the ticketing situation in the hurling, there's a mad clamour for tickets already, and a lot of people talking about that already as well.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Johnny, enjoy the racing. We'll chat to you again tomorrow morning.
Thanks, Owen.
Johnny Ward there on the line with us in and around 9 a.m. every morning here on OTB AM. Just to remind you of that play spot again. In the first race, it's number 5. In the second, it's 5 and 12. In the third, it's 10 and 16. The fourth is 9 and 13. In the fifth, it's 4, 8, 11, 21. And in the sixth, it's 4 and 11. If you missed those, don't worry. You can just log on to offtheball.com to catch that. Now, we're going to change tack a little bit because there's a brand new bromance on the sporting scene, and it is Gareth Brooks and Aidan O'Shea.
Where's this from?
Ireland.
This from Ireland? Oh, I love this guy right here. Oh, they did the key change.
Yeah.
Nice. They lost the band, I'm afraid, though.
They're coming.
You hear the bagpipes. Oh, here they come. Yes. Okay, you got to tell me, where is this?
That is the Mayo Gaelic football team from Ireland.
Oh, Gaelic football, Ireland. That's sweet. Just got to do with the game, I imagine.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Yeah, and
that's awesome.
That star there, his name is Aidan.
Aidan? Aidan. Dude, you need to be singing for a living. That's great. I love it. It is International Friendship Day,
Fitting.
right? It is fitting.
And Alex says, Garth, thank you for the best friendship ever.
Oh, that's sweet. That is sweet, man. That's cool. So let's think globally today then, okay? We'll start in Ireland. I love that. Ireland. You know my love for you.
Make it happen. We need a photograph of Gareth Brooks and Aidan O'Shea, or some video footage of them singing together, I think.
Yeah, there's the support act for Gareth when he finally makes his Crow Park gigs. It's pretty cool, in fairness. It's like, I suppose, for Gareth Brooks to be tweeting that out or to posting it out yesterday was good. I'm not a fan that it was videoed in the first place. I think that was the night they were beaten by Kildare, and you can see they're obviously in a kind of a team environment, and again, we're back to what we were talking about earlier, and people putting their heads in their phones. I think there should be a little bit of, I doubt when Aidan was singing he was expecting, and okay, it's grand now and Gareth Brooks is talking about it, but in terms of, there's other videos that go out there about players and individuals, and I think it's just probably better off lads, particularly like that, who give so much, and it's obviously someone within the group that's probably put it out, which again I'd question, would be my own personal opinion on it anyway, you know.
Yeah, It's all things considered, it's a great performance from Aidan O'Shea.
Very strong performance, yeah. Fairness, can't argue with that.
Speaking of great performances when it comes to music and dancing, are you familiar with the Kiki Challenge? I think that's what it's called.
I'm familiar with it in the last 24 hours. It's one of these social media things, I think, that comes along and people have to try and step up and see what they can do. I think I saw Sean O'Brien trying it the other day. So
we'll get to that in just a moment, but obviously it's taken off in the States. There's actually been a lot of health warnings about it in the States, because naturally what it is it's to do with a new Drake song, or I don't know if it's a new Drake song or an old Drake song. It's some Drake song, and you've got to get filmed in a moving car, then step out of the moving car and perform a dance. Let's allow Odell Beckham Jr. of the New York Giants to explain.
Gotta be real with it. Kiki, do you love me? Are you riding? Say you never ever leave from beside me. Cause I want you and I need you. Yeah. Down for you, always crazy.
So that is Odell Beckham Jr., as you can imagine, absolutely nailing it. But as you mentioned already, there's only one man who can do it better than Odell, and it is this boy.
Sean, did you hear that new song? What song?
He's more rhythm. I think it's fair to say he's more rhythm
without forget the Garth Brooks and Aidan O'Shea karaoke duet. We need to make the Beckham and Sean O'Brien dance off happen.
Yeah, again, I think the rhythm Sean O'Brien's shown there, I'm not sure Odell can live with him, to be honest with you.
You wouldn't see Odell actually doing a somersault like that or anything. Also, he's actually done it right. Odell Beckham Jr. did it in a static car. I don't want to get pedantic here, but that tractor was moving.
It was moving, yeah. So Sean's at a whole different level.
A whole different level. We look forward to more from the Irish rugby fraternity over the next couple of days. Another story we wanted to bring you this morning is an update from Conor McGregor. He was kind of running around New York yesterday morning, and a TMZ reporter managed to catch him in the act and got a couple of minutes of his time.
Did you see Aldo fight at all?
Okay, let's get the wolf, baby. Oh yeah.
Nice. Can you keep up with me? Let's do it. Let's go, baby.
Can you keep up with the champ?
Somebody hold my guy.
I got it, brother.
The only champ.
Let's do it, baby.
The only undisputed champ.
That's amazing. Are we close to seeing you fighting soon?
Yes, very close.
So is it official yet?
No, it's not official, but we're close.
But are we going to see it in 2018?
I believe so. I hope so.
Hopefully New York City?
I'm pushing for it.
Did you see the rest of that video? The reporter is like, "You're the king of New York," and McGregor's like, "I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that."
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, it was even them walking down the street there with the tops off at the end. I know they've obviously gone for a run and a bit of a workout, but again, walking down the middle of Manhattan with the tops off, getting someone telling him he's the king of New York, it's probably not something that Conor McGregor needs at the moment. I wouldn't have thought.
I see that his partner in crime, literally, Cian Cowley, was with him, and there's other videos emerging of Conor McGregor squatting with Cowley on his shoulders, which was fairly impressive. But then on the way back, I'm not sure if you noticed, Cowley was holding both of their t-shirts. Conor McGregor doesn't hold his own t-shirt when it's off his body. So yeah, he's obviously referring to the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, which is probably going to be announced by the sounds of things before the end of the year. It feels like an age ago since we've watched Conor McGregor fight in the octagon, that is.
Absolutely, when it actually is. I think we're coming up on 2 years now since he's actually fought in the UFC, so I think it's at the stage now where we're ready for him to get back in there. I think there's obviously been so much outside of the ring, and even the whole Floyd Mayweather fight, and I think everyone's kind of ready to, I certainly am anyway, to see him get back in there and kind of do what he's really good at.
Yeah, it kind of feels like I almost missed the hype around the Conor McGregor fight. Like it is unparalleled. Like there is nothing like it really. Even like he's talking about Vegas for that, I think, but the way it just pervades over here as well. Like you can say what you want about Conor McGregor, but the hype around the fights is amazing. Like, so I'm looking forward to that before the end of the year. The other thing we wanted to chat about this morning is LeBron James. He's opened up his I Promise school for at-risk kids in Akron, Ohio. So this is the stipulations of it. It's free tuition, free uniforms, free bicycle and helmet, free transportation within 2 miles, free breakfast, lunch and snacks, food pantry for families, GEDs and job placement services for parents, and guaranteed tuition, that's probably the big one, to the University of Akron for every student who graduates. So this is LeBron James putting his money where his mouth is. He is walking the walk. This, without getting into the realms of hyperbole too much, could be his biggest achievement of his career.
I would have thought so. Yeah, this is absolutely incredible, and a couple of key things. This is a public school as well. So in the sense that in the States, it's not a kind of a prep school where people are going to pay and he's making money off it. This is absolutely, he's bringing in underprivileged kids who are struggling to meet their demands in terms of education, in terms of family support around them. So everything within that school environment is set up to help take them from an area of poverty where they're unlikely to try and get out or get on a road to success. And he's trying to give them that, and it's an incredible platform that he's using, and what he's delivered in terms of his off the court in the last year or two in particular has gone to a whole new level, certainly from an awareness point of view, from my point of view. But he's famously come out earlier on the year, and he's more than an athlete, he came out and said, and he's kind of backing it up. When you see something like that and how much of an impact that's going to make on the community, and he goes back into where he's from in Akron in Ohio, which would be a working class area, and he's setting the bar very, very high for professional sports athletes in terms of what they're doing back socially over in America.
Yeah, it's great. That's obviously rightly the headline news from yesterday, but with that there was a lot of press done. He spoke to CNN, he spoke to a couple of ESPN reporters, and again, as you talk about the activism there, that he's gone to a whole new level in the last year, which is great to see, because you look at the NFL and the way they've rolled back on the anthem stance, and where it's now for a lot of franchises it's going to be mandatory for the upcoming season to stand for the anthem. It is mandatory nationalism, whereas with the NBA, particularly with LeBron, it's gone the other way. The Trump scenario has actually pushed him more into the forefront in terms of being a political voice, and it's fantastic to see.
It is, and you look at it, and the NBA is streets ahead of where the NFL in particular is at in terms of from that activism, in terms of, and even it's not just the players. Like you look, LeBron and a couple of the high profile players will come out, and they've, I know Dwayne Wade and Carmelo Anthony, and there's other guys who come out doing similar in terms of what they're trying to do. But even the coaches, you look at Steve Kerr, Greg Popovich, they're coming out and they're willing to come out and make, and it's their own personal viewpoint, and they're willing to put it out there. They're willing to challenge what's happening in America at the moment. Whereas you see from an NFL point of view, it's kind of like, don't say anything, don't get involved, and the whole obviously Kaepernick's put himself out there, Eric Reid and a couple other guys, and what's happened to them. And you've seen now the new rules coming in around the anthem and all that type of stuff, and
it's not nice.
It's not nice, and how owners are kind of rowing back in terms of they're going. And Trump is obviously sends his tweet every now and again about the NFL and about what they're trying to do, and but in fairness, and what the NBA are doing, and you can see it in terms of their viewing figures, the numbers that are going to games, in terms of the way the NBA is trending in America is being led by the players and by the coaches who are willing to take, it's not so much take a stand, but willing to speak their mind.
It's true, but at the same, like, it's totally right to say that it's the NBA kind of leading the fight in this, like, as an organisation, because just because you throw a ball through a hoop doesn't make you more politically vocal than just because you play football. So it's nothing to do with the players as individuals or the society they're in. Like, it's very similar demographics from disadvantaged backgrounds, more players in fact in the NFL, and the stark difference in how vocal people are in the NBA to the NFL can only suggest that there is a huge sort of fear of the suits and in terms of contracts in the NFL. It's the only explanation.
I think it is, and again, the NFL is probably, just very quickly, one of the few American sports where your money isn't guaranteed, or in terms of your contract can be gone from 1 week to the next, in terms of you obviously get your signing bonus, you get whatever, but you hear sometimes you see these 4 or 5 year contracts and massive salaries. But in the NFL, the owners have the power where if they don't need you and you're not there, they can cut you, they can get rid of you, so whereas the NBA, it's guaranteed money. So, and look, let's make no mistake, LeBron James is the biggest star in American sport at the moment, and he's the one coming out there. It's very hard for an owner to criticise him, and owners saying, and you've seen JJ Watt and other NFL players come out and do massive things as well for their communities. But in terms of this actual stance, in terms of taking a stand, and feels like it is harder for NFL players to do, in terms of they're probably more disposable is the wrong word, but as in there's more of them, in terms of there's 53 guys on a roster, and it feels like some of the NFL owners are kind of saying, well, if you don't do what we need, we'll just get someone else in who can, and
stay in your lane sort of thing.
Stay in your lane, and it's obviously it's not really possible to say that to a LeBron James at the moment, so it's there is differences. It's probably a little bit harsh to kind of just put it in terms of, even from an ownership point of view, where they're going with the NBA teams compared to what the NFL owners are in a position to do. There is a big difference.
It's very true. Just one last thing on it, actually, just from like, you could go down through a YouTube rabbit hole in terms of interviews LeBron did yesterday alone, and there was some uninterrupted footage that came out. So they sit LeBron in a barbershop with a load of other stars. Odell Beckham Jr. is another one, and Jon Stewart is one of the people, and Jon Stewart talks a little bit about LeBron's son and how LeBron admits himself that he's getting into fights with other parents, not getting into fights with other parents, he's getting aggro with other parents on the side of the court, and kind of has to apologise to his mother, because when he was on the court, he used to be giving out to his own mother for being too aggro with other parents as well. And he made this really interesting comment. He said, "I still regret giving my son my name," which it's just one of those lines where it's like, that says a lot. And you do start to wonder, from what he's seen from like setting up the school, all that sort of stuff, that if he had his time back, he wouldn't like give that unintended pressure to his son by calling him LeBron.
Yeah, and his son is one of the standout kind of for his age. I think he's only 13 or 14, is he? And he's looking to go into high school next year. But I think another was interesting. I saw a comment from LeBron recently about where he made it from, where his journey to get to the NBA through high school, to make it through that. He was going up against effectively what his son is now. He was going against the kind of kids who had everything not given to them, but like they didn't have to work as hard. They didn't have to claw and fight for everything they had. And so it's going to, if his son does make it, and the reality is, if his son does make the NBA, it's a massive achievement. Is he ever going to live up to his dad's level? It's unlikely, but still making, if he did make it to an elite college basketball program, if he does play for one of the top college basketball programs or does get drafted to the NBA, it's still a success story. But it's just, again, it is going to be a pressure for him, because no matter what he ever does, it's always going to be compared to what his dad did. For
sure. Can LeBron and the Lakers contend next season?
I think contend's probably a bit too soon for him. Yeah.
It might playoffs though.
You'd imagine so, yeah. But again, like LeBron obviously straight away legitimises them and gives them an opportunity. They have a lot of young guys there that probably need to progress. But unless they've one or two trades coming up, you'd imagine it's going to be hard for them to compete. Particularly in the West, is very deep at the moment.
Yeah, plenty of months of preview for that. We should get you on as well before the NFL kicks off, because you're selling Jur in a fantasy league, aren't you?
We are.
Have you drafted yet, or is it Dynasty League?
Dynasty League, yeah. No, draft's not yet. No, it's early September, I think. So yeah.
We'll have to stream that live on Off the Ball or something.
I'll be happy with that. Yeah, that's all right. It's good by me.
We'll get to Jim Bolger in just a moment, but just a couple of cycling videos to play. Geraint Thomas has been around the block now over the last 48 hours. He's done interviews with all the major outlets in the UK. This is probably the standout one, the one where ITV push him a little bit.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of like animosity towards us, I guess, because we've been so successful and dominant. But at the same time, you didn't really take it in too much during the race, because you're so focused on what you're doing. It's obviously not nice, because you want everyone to support you, but I think it definitely brought us closer as a team.
You say the animosity is because of Team Sky's success. It's kind of more than that, though, isn't it? It's Bradley Wiggins' TUEs, it's the hammering they got in Parliament, it's the testosterone patches, doctor being investigated by the GMC, all these things in the last couple of years, the Jiffy Bag saga. Do you get why people feel the way they do towards Team Sky?
Yeah, you can understand a bit of it, but I think for me it's just I haven't had much to do with any of it, well, anything to do with it.
2 Tour de France winners in one team seems one too many. Is it an opportunity for you to leave all the Team Sky baggage behind and go and be number one somewhere else?
Yeah, possibly, but at the same time I don't want to go to just any team that can't really support me 100% on the road.
Yeah, Geraint Thomas there speaking to Steve Smith of ITV News. Here then is our final Digger Form dispatch of the 2018 Tour de France. Enjoy.
So at the age of 32, Geraint Thomas wins his first Grand Tour and completes his transformation from Spring Classics rider to Grand Tour winner, and Sky's dominance continues. That's 6 wins in 7 seasons with 3 riders, and in my opinion it's impossible to have a discussion around this without first going back to 2016. Fancy Bears finding out that Wiggins got 3 injections of Kinnecourt prior to 3 Grand Tours. This is a year after the CERC report into doping in cycling. One doctor spoke about cortisone and how he felt that it was medically impossible for riders to lose the weight they were losing without the use of outside influences. Another doctor said that he felt some recent big World Tour wins were down to the use of cortisone by a team and its leaders. We had obviously the British Parliamentary report of in March of this year, where they wrote that they believed that Kinnecourt had been used by Sky and Wiggins and his teammates to increase their watts per kilogram rather than for medical use. Then we go back to 2016, the Matt Lawton story on the Jiffy Bag, Brailsford's contradictory excuses for said Jiffy Bag. We had the testosterone delivery to British cycling. Then on Chris Froome, we had prednisone taken at the 2014 Tour of Romandy. We had salbutamol issue with Froome at 2017 Vuelta. with Michael Barry talking about tramadol being given to riders in his time at Sky a number of years ago. So it's in light of all this, we're meant to set all that aside and believe that it's marginal gains and attention to detail. And is this the attention to detail that lost him medical files, that had a laptop stolen, the only laptop with the medical files on them, and that got them hiring Gert Linders, the infamous Gert Linders, seemingly without a thorough background check being carried out? So we're asked, should we believe in Sky? I would say, why should we believe in Sky? Because if we don't learn from the mistakes of our past, we are surely condemned to repeat them again. And I would hope that some people will get that memo, both in fans and media.
Yeah, Digger Forum there with his final dispatch from the Tour de France. Geraint Thomas claiming his first Tour Team Sky with yet another one. We're going to wrap up now in just a moment. We're going to play you out with the Jim Bolger interview. I need to get your takes actually for the weekend Super 8s, your predictions. It's obviously in the three games that matter. Let's assume you think Dublin are going to win. Who's going to win on the West Coast, so to speak?
I'll start from the top down. I actually think Tyrone are going to beat Donegal in Ballybuffet. I think they'll go in and beat them. I think it looks like Owen Gallagher's out as well, and if between himself and McBrearty missing, I think Tyrone might just have enough to be it'll be very tight, but I think Tyrone might do it. I think Galway will beat Monaghan, and I think Kerry will beat Kildare, and I think we'll end up with Dublin and Kerry and Galway and Tyrone.
We'll see you back here this time next week to preview Kerry versus Dublin. Mossy, thanks a million for everything this morning. So tonight on Off the Ball, we're focusing on the hurling replay of Galway versus Clare. It's Tommy Walsh and Dahi Regan on the line. We will be back ourselves tomorrow morning from 7:45 a.m. Anthony Moyles and Lee Keegan will be joining us tomorrow morning, so it's a great show. More Super 8s action coming your way. But to play you out today, we're chatting to Jim Bolger. So on Tuesday, August 14th, Hurling for Cancer will take place at 6 o'clock in St. Conleth's Park in Newbridge. It's the 7th year in a row of the brilliant event, organised by horse racing legend Jim Bolger and champion jockey Davy Russell. It's going to see a host of Irish hurling and horse racing stars come together for what promises to be yet another fantastic evening for everyone involved. We're going to tweet out the link, and the cancer.ie link, where you can go and you can donate. But we're going to leave you with this. Jim Bolger popped into the studio with us last week for a great chat. Enjoy. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Okay, so the Hurling for Cancer charity match is coming up on the 14th of August this year. It's on in Newbridge in St. Conleth's Park. Throw-in is going to be at 6 o'clock on that occasion. And of course, it's all in aid of the Irish Cancer Society. It's been played every year now since 2012, and over €700,000 has been raised for charity in that time. I'm delighted to say legendary racing trainer Jim Bolger joins me in studio now this morning. Jim, how are things?
Very well at the moment, thanks. Yeah,
good stuff. So hurling for Cancer, we must talk about this because it looks brilliant. It's Davy Russell's best against Jim Bolger's stars, and looking at a little bit of the form lines going over the last few years, you've had the upper hand over Davy with 4 wins, I think, since 2012.
And a draw, but he got the better of us last year.
Right, so, okay, revenge this year then.
And he's gone out poaching now this year, and I see he's added a few that are going to make it very difficult for me.
Yeah, we'll stick up the teams online, but like there's obviously a slew of hurling legends when you look through those teams, but there's also a few other ones, like you can see Peter Canavan there, like you can see Tyg Furlong and Willie Mullins among the umpires, for example, and yes. Miriam O'Callaghan, a sideline official. So it's a great lineup. Yeah,
well, they all very willingly give their time, and we very much appreciate that. You know, they're a great help.
They're also, for the most part, top class current or former athletes. I presume things get a little bit competitive in this annual match.
Yeah, we started out with more jockeys and more stable staff, but I don't know who cheated first, whether it was Davy or me, but we now have players from a lot of counties that have All-Ireland medals.
Yeah, absolutely. Hurling, of course, is something very close to your own heart as well. What did you make of Wexford's calendar year this year?
Well, sure, we gave it a good shot for a while, and probably a little bit unlucky maybe not to go further in the league. And you know, they put up a good show on most occasions, but they're still a work in progress, and I'd say next year will probably be their breakthrough year.
Yeah, well, hopefully from a Wexford perspective it is. Like I wanted to just mention as well, kind of going back a good while, because I remember a couple of years ago we had Ned Wheeler and Art Foley on the show talking about 1956 and beating Cork. Obviously that was the double years, 55 and 56. Do you remember those 2 All-Ireland wins from Wexford's perspective?
Yeah, I started secondary school the day after they won the final in 55. That was the first one.
Against Galway?
Yes, yeah. And then the following year they won a proper All-Ireland. They beat Cork. And at that stage, we were always worried about how we might get to the matches. It wasn't whether they were going to win or not.
Yeah.
They won everything for about 2 years. And then they had a bit of a break then when some of the older players like Nicky Rackard were giving up. And we won another All-Ireland then in 60. And then we had to wait 8 years after that. So in my time, Wexford have won 5 All-Irelands. So from a purely personal point of view, I'd be very happy with that, you know.
It's been pretty good.
I'd like to see some of the younger people in Wexford, for them to witness what we witnessed as youngsters.
Yeah, anyone under the age of 21, 22 obviously wouldn't have seen it yet.
No, they wouldn't have, no. And it's amazing the way the years have flown by, you know, that they've gone a long time now without success.
It was like you mentioned the Rackards there, I presume even just watching 56, like seeing the Rackards and Christy Ring on the same pitch must have been unbelievable. Yeah. And the legend has it that Christy Ring was actually carried off the pitch shoulder high, despite the fact that Cork lost that.
He was carried off by the Wexford fellas. Yeah, he was. The first inter-county game that I was ever at was probably in 54 or 55, and we went to the match by Pony and Trap in Wexford, and Christy Ring was playing with Cork that day, and Nicky Rackard, all the 3 Rackards were playing with Wexford.
How long did that journey take?
Not very long. We had a very good pony.
Right, okay.
About 45 minutes, I think. And we only saw 2 or 3 motor cars on the way in, and everyone else were on bicycles.
And was the fact that you had a good pony down to your own keen eye for a good horse at that point?
No, my father, sure. I was on an 11-year-old at that stage. But my father always had a good pony. He'd a good mode of transport.
Yeah. You obviously picked up the hurling when you were a kid as well. Like, how far did your hurling career, so to speak, last for?
Not very long. I hurled juvenile and minor, and I got 1 run with a senior team in Oilgate. They had a good senior team at the time. It was hard to get on it anyway.
Right.
And I came to Dublin then when I was 17. And I played a few games with the Father Murphys in Dublin and had a couple of outings with the Fogs, who had a very good team at that stage. I remember I was corner forward on a team probably in 1963 or 4. And Billy Dwyer was full forward, who was a former Kilkenny All-Star. And Niall Quinn's father, the late Billy Quinn, was in the other corner. And I know Mick Burns from Tipperary was on the same team, but
that's one hell of a cast.
I didn't last very long there, so I had a bad ankle, and that was my excuse. So I retired at an early age.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I had 1 outing on Dan Quigley in Wexford, and he says that he's responsible for me being a racehorse trainer, that he sickened me as far as hurling was concerned.
You mentioned your father there, and that's obviously your first introduction really to horses and looking after his mares, I think, while also studying in the College of Commerce, so there was a bit of a balancing act at one point in your life.
Well, that was after I came to Dublin. I went to the College of Commerce, that was to try and get some sort of a respectability from an academic point of view, that I might be able to earn a few shillings and be able to buy a racehorse someday. But that didn't last too long anyway, and I decided in the end to go training.
Yeah, there must have been some sort of element of confidence that it was the right decision at the time, that you must have had some sort of talent that was being spoken about, that you realised, I can actually make this if I work hard enough.
Well, I didn't really know until I tried it.
Sure.
But I always had an alternative in mind, that if it didn't work. But I only thought about the alternative for about 6 months. We got off to a very good start. I got my licence in July of 76, and we had a winner fairly quickly. And then I had a double, a winner at Clonmel and a winner at the Curragh on the same day. And at that stage then, you know, when somebody comes in from the outside like that and has 2 winners, people want to know who he is. And it began to happen from there then. And I had 22 then the following year, so we were up and running at that stage.
Yeah, it was a fairly kind of incremental increase over the years. And I presume the belief then starts to grow as well.
Yes, of course, confidence is a big thing in any sport or business. And we would have had it from pretty early start, you know, that I was never in any doubt but that I would be able to do it and that we would be able to keep it going. But that meant working about 18 hours a day, so you know, not everybody's prepared to do that.
You must have loved the 18 hours a day, though, because I think I've seen you say in the past that you wished you started focusing in on just the horses 10 years earlier.
Yes, yeah, well, I might have been able to give up by now, so, but in any case, yeah, I did. I had a slight regret that I didn't start earlier, but it wasn't a big thing with me.
Yeah, it's interesting actually that you mention Dublin there, because just thinking about it now, you had to leave Dublin kind of in part due to the Pope, and which is obviously relevant speaking in the year 2018 now, and he's about to come back to Dublin.
Yeah.
Well, is that true? What's the story there?
Yeah, well, we had there was a public gallop in the Phoenix Park. It was at the back of the embassy, and we used to use that. We had to get a licence from the Board of Works to use it every year, and the late Christy Grassick and Paddy Cairns and myself and a few others used to use it. And anyway, when the Pope was coming, we were thrown out. So actually, it was a good thing because I had to do something about it then. So we went looking for a place at that stage, and we found Coolcullen in County Kilkenny, and we've been there ever since.
Yeah, things worked out pretty well in the end. You can thank the Pope for that.
Oh yes, definitely. Yeah. I did go down to see him in the park along with a million others, and that was a great day.
Yeah. I did want to ask you about those early days in Coolcullen, and I guess sort of the reputation that you had at the time, and a reputation that maybe you tried your best, I'm not sure, to part with, the idea that you were the best around at training fillies. And despite the fact that what seems to be a fact, when I listen to people who know what they're talking about, say it's much harder to train a filly than it is to train a colt. But it seems from what I've read that there was almost kind of a stigma attached to that you could only train a filly but not a colt, despite the fact that it was much more difficult.
Yeah, well, sure, it's the same in any sport, isn't it? You get people talking about hurlers or footballers who are only good when there's a cut in the ground, and if when the ground dries out, they're no use, you know. So a lot of it is only chat anyway.
Sure.
Like if you can train a filly, you can train a colt.
Like maybe it happens a lot earlier than that, but you think about the 92 Irish Derby, and is that a moment when you think that kind of view of you as somebody who could only train a filly was kind of fully put to the rear window?
Well, I think when you train a Derby winner or have a champion 2-year-old colt, that it's accepted then that you can do either, yeah.
And at that point, in 92, was it a surprise for you? Obviously, you've been working extremely hard for a couple of decades before that to get this win. What did that feel like? I presume the idea that the change in your view wasn't actually in your head at the time. The most important thing was winning the Irish Derby.
Well, the big thing I remember most about it was that no Irish trainer had won the Irish Derby for some time before that. I think the previous one would have been Law Society, and that could have been 7 or 8 years before we won it. And you know, the general racing public were beginning to wonder, would an Irish trainer ever win it again? So when he turned into the straight in front anyway, and he was increasing the distance between himself and his followers all the time up to the winning post, they nearly took the roof off the stand at the Curragh. So everybody that was there, I think, were more pleased, or just as pleased and happy about it as I was.
Yeah, for sure.
He was a world champion that year.
Was he?
So, yeah, he was rated 5 pounds above AP Indy, who was the best horse in America. And you know, when you think that there are 100,000 foals born every year, how lucky must you be to have the best one out of 100,000?
It's not luck, though, is it?
Well, you have to be in the right place at the right time. There has to be a certain amount of luck, you know, to get a horse like that. And I suppose then, you know, you have to do the right thing with him. So,
yeah.
We were fortunate to be able to get the job done.
When you think about it, the right thing has been done a lot in Coolcullen down through the decades. When you think about it, like, How much does that culture of excellence, how long does that take to actually instill? Was it from day one when you thought to yourself, right, okay, this is going to be better than everybody else, this is going to be high on discipline, high on work rate, and we are going to produce some of the best jockeys, some of the best trainers that Irish racing will ever see? Or was that just kind of an unexpected consequence of trying to survive at the start?
Well, I always grew up with discipline. There were 8 of us in the family, and I think our parents were wonderful to be able to look after 8 of us at that time, and it wasn't easy, especially on a medium-sized farm. And when I went to school, then obviously there was a lot of discipline in schools at that time. And secondary school was the Christian Brothers in Enniscorthy, and discipline was high on the agenda there. And there was one teacher there who was huge into discipline but never raised his hand to anybody, and he was the best teacher that I've ever seen or heard of, and nowadays he happens to be Colm Tobin's father.
Right.
Yeah, but at that stage he was just Micheál Tobin. And so that, I think if you're exposed to discipline at that stage, it'll follow through for the rest of your life.
And that was something that you brought to Coolcullen?
Yeah, I brought that to the job then as well, yeah.
How does that manifest itself then? Is it kind of being hard when you need to be against certain people in the setup to certain apprentices?
No, you just lead from the front, and then you expect others to follow suit and to look after their patch as well as you're looking after your patch.
Yeah.
And I when that happens, it's sort of automatic at that stage. And then, of course, you have to establish a reputation for being a no-nonsense person. So obviously there are times when you have to be firm, but that hasn't happened now in the last 25 years or so. The reputation goes a long ways, Yeah.
It certainly does. Well, the reputations of the others that have worked under you have gone a long, long way as well, and are still continuing to go that way. And I often wonder, when you look at the likes of Tony McCoy, you look at the likes of Willie Mullins and Aidan O'Brien, I completely accept I'm only naming a fraction of the big names that have come out of the place. But was that deliberate from your point of view to actually nurture great talent, that there will be a legacy of Coolcullen, or was it more a sense that I want to be successful in the here and now, and whoever succeeds off the back of it, all well and good?
No, well, what happened in my case was that we had a reputation for doing things the right way, and then parents wanted to send their young sons or daughters to work with me because they knew that they'd be nurtured in the right direction. And that was precisely what happened. And luck came in there as well. I mean, how lucky do you have to be to meet people like that, that you can sort of bring along and direct them to a successful career in their own right.
Is there a common thread amongst that kind of potential greatness that you saw in the likes of O'Brien or Mullins?
Well, I know that I don't think of any of the ones that were mentioned, and you can throw in a few more there as well, like Kevin Manning and Billy Supple and his brother Robbie. They never had to be reprimanded at any stage about anything. It was amazing how they wanted to succeed themselves, and I don't think I ever had a crossword with any of those people in all the years that they were with me.
That's remarkable to hear, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a self-discipline element then as well, I presume.
Yeah, well, the only time I had a difference with Anthony McCoy was when he was leaving. He had broken his leg about 6 months earlier, and I felt that it was too soon to be going riding over fences in England, and that possibly whatever trainer he might be with wouldn't take care of him the way we had taken care of him. And anyway, I didn't succeed, so and if you have him on the show sometime, he can tell you the whole story.
Yeah, I briefly recall him talking about a broken femur or something like that, and something about underestimating his pain threshold or something is what he said on the record about it before. But
yeah,
the other thing then, when you look at the flip side, you can look back in time and say, well, I clearly got that one right, is with Galileo. Is it true that Aidan O'Brien didn't rate Galileo?
Well, he did rate him, but I think as a sire, he preferred High Chaparral.
Okay.
But I mean, anybody could, if you want to call it a mistake, could make that mistake. You know, that very few horses are successful at stud anyway. And he felt that from the demeanour of High Chaparral that he might be a better sire. But in any case, he was pretty successful as well. But Galileo is phenomenal.
What did you see in him?
Well, I was very impressed with him. The first time I saw him run was at Leopardstown. And it was a maiden 2-year-old race at the back end of the season. And he won as he liked. And I knew that he had a very good pedigree. And I felt that he was the horse to follow on then as a 3-year-old. And maybe when he'd go to stud, John Magner might be kind enough to give me extended credit terms and I might be able to use them. So it all started from there.
Right, okay. We're almost out of time here. Just one other thing I wanted to chat to you about is just kind of the future of racing and today in racing. And I think maybe all through the decades of racing, the people who've trusted in youth have been rewarded for it. And you're somebody who's trusted in youth quite a bit. And I guess with racing, it's one of those sports that, unlike any other, you can put a trust in youth. There might be a naivety at times, but when it comes to pure talent, it's all about trusting that. And if you're trusting it early, you can get ahead of the game and you can look back in time and say, well, listen, I got that one bang on the money.
Yeah, well, you mean when you're talking about youth there, you're talking about people.
Sure, yes.
Young fellas or young girls coming into me. Yeah, well, I'd like to think anyway that any young person who has come to me, that they've been able to reap their full potential, whether it was just working with horses on a daily basis or making it to the track and being successful on the track. It's not easy to get going as a rider if you don't get up a few winners very quickly and try and get the confidence of your trainer or the people who are giving you the most rides at the beginning. But we've been fortunate in that the ones that showed ability, that we were able to nurture that ability, and they went on to great success.
They sure did. You mentioned there not having early success can be to your detriment. It's ruthless. It always has been. Do you think it's more ruthless now for somebody starting off than it was, say, 30, 40 years ago?
I wouldn't think there's much difference, really. You know yourself in all sports. If you don't shine when you get the big opportunity, it's hard enough to come back from that, you know. So if the young person has ability in whatever the sport is, and they get a reasonable chance to show it, if it's really there and they have all the other ingredients that go with the talent, I think then they have a good chance of making it.
And then from your perspective, if the next Jim Bolger was to emerge now, or can the next Jim Bolger emerge in this current landscape? Can a self-made trainer become very, very top of the class and succeed beyond their wildest dreams? Can you see that happening now, or has money taken over to the point where being self-made is nigh on impossible?
I would hate to foist another Jim Bolger on the racing community, but the opportunity is still there for young people starting out, but they need to be bankrolled nowadays.
Yeah,
because horses have got so expensive, and there's a huge demand for Irish horses all over the world, and it's very hard to pick up a bargain nowadays, whereas when I was starting out there were a few bargains around, but it's more difficult, much more difficult now. So any young people now that ask me about setting up as a trainer, I'd ask them, have they got 2 million quid? So it's a little bit like that you need 1 million for your premises and another 1 million then that you're prepared to risk and put in the raw material yourself, and take the gamble and then prove to people that you can train horses. And when people see that you can do it, then they'll want to send horses to you. But even for reasonably successful trainer starting out. It's still difficult now. It's so competitive.
Of course it is, and it's flying high on an international level as well. Just a final mention again for Hurling for Cancer. It's on Tuesday, August 14th in St Conal's Park in Newbridge. Who's going to win it? Davy Russell's Best or Jim Bolger's Stars?
Well, if I were a bookmaker now, I'd probably be making Davy favourite because he's poached a few top hurlers there, and I'm not sure if we have the numbers to compete with him, but we'll give it a good shot.
Well, the very best of luck with it. We'll hope for an upset in a couple of weeks. Jim Bolger, thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.